I revere this office, but I love my country more.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much.
There's an energy out there right now. I'm convinced that we are going to win the White House, the Senate, and the House.
I believe we're going to hold our majority, but it will be close.
With the future president of the United States!
Donald Trump has to win this election.
And I would expect there to be a line, which is very exciting, that energy that we're feeling. There's a lot of people participating.
I would stand here as long as it takes to vote.
We have many paths, in fact, to victory, and I feel very good about where we are.
Groceries have gone up like triple, and I'm hoping that people are going to think about that when they go into that voting booth.
You got a choice in this election.
By every measure, she has demonstrated that she's ready.
So here we have the Trump cookies, and then over here we have the Harris cookies.
Trump-a-mania, run wild!
That's unbelievable. I had to say it.
That's just his style, but that's the style that got him all the support.
Whereas if we heard that out of our loved ones, we'd be like, okay, Grandpa, it's time to take your keys.
But secure our borders, help our veterans and help the U.S. people.
We want to make sure that, we have somebody that's want to support women and abortion rights. Is very important to us.
Now the fate of our nation is in your hands. It really is. We win this state, we win the whole thing.
Make no mistake, we will win.
Hello, and welcome to the Brian Lamb School of Communications live election night broadcast. It's Tuesday, November 5th, and we're coming to you live from the campus of Purdue University. I'm Yumi Colombo.
And I'm Jack Brown. We've got a busy and historic night ahead of us. The polls are now closed here in the state of Indiana, where Purdue University is located. We should begin to get early results any time now. And we've got a team behind the scenes working to get numbers to us as they become available.
Let's now take a look at the agenda for tonight. We are broadcasting from two locations on campus. Here in the Digital Media Production Center located in Stewart Center, and we'll be live from Honors Hall in the John Martinson Honors College. That's where we've got a watch party happening for students.
We've got to thank everyone who is collaborating with us on this event tonight. A big shout out to the Brian Lamb School of Communication, the Center for C-SPAN Scholarship and Engagement, the CCSC student community, the Departments of Political Science and History, the John Martinson Honors College, Pi Sigma Alpha, that is the Political Science Honor Society, the Political Discourse Club, Purdue Petty Crew Speech and Debate Forum, the students of Live Field Production, Fast Track News, Broadcast Performance, Com 261 and Com 332, and Watching Washington.
Tonight is truly a team effort. Thanks to everyone who made tonight happen.
As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, polls have closed in Indiana. That's the case for all counties on Eastern Time. Those on Central still have about 50 more minutes or so. Polls in more than half of the counties in Kentucky are also closed at this hour. Let's take a look at a map to show you how the rest of the evening looks across the country. This information comes from the site 270towin.org. You can see the portions of Indiana and Kentucky in gray. That's where the polls are now closed. Although it's important to note that you just needed to be in line by 6 o'clock, so there may be places where ballots are still being cast. Coming up at 7 o'clock, the rest of Indiana and Kentucky will close their voting locations. Plus, we pick up states like Virginia, South Carolina, Vermont, parts of Florida, and Georgia. And Yumi, tell us why we'll be watching Georgia closely.
Not only is Georgia a swing state, meaning it could go blue or red, but it was an important state in the 2020 election, and there's still controversy there.
You're referring to the criminal case against former president and current Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. Trump's reported phone call with the Georgia Secretary of State asking him to, quote, find 11,000 votes, end quote, is still pending trial there. A lot of eyes will be on Georgia tonight.
Let's talk about the big race of the night. The race for president between the Democratic nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, and the Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump.
When President Biden was running for re-election, the polls showed President Trump with an edge, but that all changed when Biden announced that he would not be running and his then running mate, Vice President Harris, stepped up to run in his place. Since then, Harris gained the edge in many polls, but the majority of polls still put this race as a close one, so we are expecting it to be a long night. Remember that with the Electoral College, each state has a certain number of delegates to award to the winning candidate, and the number each hopes to get to is 270. Indiana has 11 delegates, Kentucky has 8. Both states are expected to go red, meaning the delegates will be awarded to former President Donald Trump, but we will see.
Indiana and Kentucky will likely be the first states called. That could happen within this 6 o'clock hour. We'll bring you those results when we get them.
In addition to electing a new president tonight, there's a battle for control of Congress. Both parties are fighting for who will be the majority next year in both the House and the Senate. In the Senate, each state has 2 senators. Senators are elected to 6-year terms, with 1/3 being up for re-election every 2 years. This year, there are 34 seats that will be decided. Right now, the majority is in the hands of the Democrats, but just barely, with a margin of 51 to 49. And in the event of a tie, which has happened in the past 2 administrations, the vice president becomes the tie-breaking vote. In the House, Republicans hold the majority with 220 members to 212 Democrats, and there are 3 vacancies. House members are up for re-election every 2 years. That's all 435 seats.
Now it is time to focus on 2 high-profile gubernatorial races in Indiana and North Carolina. According to 538 in Indiana, U.S. Senator and Republican gubernatorial nominee Mike Braun is leading his Democratic challenger, former Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction Jennifer McCormick, by 11 points. In addition to the nominees of the 2 major parties, a third-party candidate has the potential to play spoiler. Donald Rainwater, the Libertarian Party candidate, won 11.4% of votes in the 2020 gubernatorial election, according to the Associated Press. A similar turnout in this election could siphon votes from Braun and give McCormick a path to victory. A McCormick victory would be significant, as a Democrat has not been elected to a statewide office in Indiana since 2012. In North Carolina, the latest polling gathered by 538 shows Democrat Josh Stein leading Republican Mark Robinson by 15 points. Stein is finishing up his 2nd term as the Attorney General for North Carolina, and if elected, would be the first Jewish governor of North Carolina, according to the Duke Chronicle. Stein also served as a state senator in the North Carolina General Assembly from 2008 to 2017. On the other side, Robinson is wrapping up his 1st term as the state's lieutenant governor, and his winning would also be historic for the state, as he would become the first Black governor. Robinson's chances took a hit when a CNN report linked him to comments left on pornographic message board. The comments, which included support for the reinstatement of slavery, anti-transgender rhetoric, and labeling himself as a, quote, Black Nazi, resulting in several staff resignations, pulling support from the GOP, and former President Donald Trump distancing himself from Robinson, according to the Duke Chronicle. Unlike previous years, there was no polling location on Purdue's campus on Election Day, but there were polling sites a short walk or bus ride away.
Purdue student government provided bus rides to one of those sites to help get students to the polls and back to class. Reporter Jasmine Studebaker tagged along. Let's go check in on the other half of our broadcast tonight, an honors hall at the John Martinson Honors College. This is where several student organizations are setting up tonight. They've got a lot of activities planned. There's also free food, need we say more, and TV coverage of this broadcast and more channels showing election results. The party over there goes until 10 o'clock tonight. Our live reporter, Denton Otero, is there. We'll check in with him in just a few minutes.
Coming up, we'll get a live report from the watch party at Honors Hall, and we'll talk to Purdue faculty members about the impact of this election and the states and races they will be watching tonight.
Our election night live coverage continues right after this. You're watching the Purdue Channel.
Are you looking for a new hobby?
Or you want to have a fun evening with your friends?
Then come climb to new heights at the Co-Rec Climbing Wall.
Our election night watch party is now in full swing at Honors Hall. Come on over for food, games, and discussion.
This event has been months in the making, and it wouldn't happen without the many student groups who volunteered to help with the program tonight. Reporter Denton Otero is one of them now. Hi, Denton.
That's right. I've got a member of Pi Sigma Alpha, the Political Science Honor Society. They're involved in the program tonight at the watch party. So first, tell us a little bit about what's going on here in the Honors Hall.
So we've got an election night watch party with a bunch of different organizations here on campus. As mentioned, Pi Sigma Alpha's co-hosting or helping host it. We've got trivia and events and different games going on just to sort of cover what's going on election night and have a little bit of fun with it as well.
What can students expect when they walk in?
We have door prizes, we have food over at the front, and throughout the night we'll be having, like I said, trivia. We have different prediction stations if you want to predict the outcome of different states. So that's very exciting.
Which activity are you looking forward to the most, and what is a can't-miss event here tonight?
I'm a little biased because I created some of the trivia questions, but I say you have to participate in the trivia. We've got a big Kahoot session going on, so that'll be really fun. So I think that's the can't-miss event of the night.
And since you study political science, election night is probably something you look forward to. And what do you want students to know about the political process playing out here tonight?
I think it's really important to have a lot of involvement on a college campus. So whether you're a citizen or an international student, it's really important to just get involved as much as you can and just learn more about the process in general.
And talk to me a little bit about Pi Sigma Alpha. What's the purpose of your organization, and what happens at your meetings and events?
So we're the Political Science Honor Society. We're the local Purdue chapter of a national organization that aims to create an environment and a community for political science students with different networking opportunities and research opportunities and all of the above. So at our meetings, we have a lot of different informational speakers and different meetings and topics like that. So it's just a lot of different opportunities for poli-sci students.
Okay, and who can join, and are they accepting new members every day?
We're always accepting new members. It is mainly for political science majors and minors because it is a political science honor society, but we encourage anyone to ask if they're interested in joining.
Well, awesome. We thank you very much for having us here tonight, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Denton. Now, let's dissect this election with our faculty experts. What will history remember about this election? And what will states and races do, or what do they think, and what should we be watching for tonight?
Kylan McElroy is standing by with the experts. Kylan?
Thank you, Jack and Yumi. I'm joined by professors in political science and history. Welcome to Dr. Catherine Brownell, Dr. Jay McCann, and Dr. Robert Browning. Thank you all for being here tonight. So first, let's talk about what's made this election a little bit unique. Dr. Brownell, as someone who looks at presidential elections, what do you think history will remember about this one?
A lot. I think that there are many historical moments that are happening here. There are consequential issues that are being debated and people are voting on. But there are many firsts that could happen. Of course, there's a possibility that you have the first woman elected as president and finally breaking that glass ceiling. I think, as a historian, I think that we need to kind of put this broader election in context. And I believe that one of the things that will be a defining feature in how we talk about this election is this question of democracy. We've seen a variety of systematic attacks on democratic institutions and processes and the integrity behind that. We've seen political violence, kind of broadly speaking, thinking about the aftermath of the 2020 election, conspiracy theories around that, the violence of the January 6th insurrection. And so when I think historians will put this in context of those broader questions about the viability of democratic processes and institutions in this age where you have, again, rampant misinformation and deep polarization.
Thank you. I definitely think that history will be made tonight. Dr. McCann, I'm interested in your opinion on polling. Do you think that the polls are accurate, and do you think that this is going to be a close race?
Well, I think the race couldn't be any closer than it is right now. All the polls, if you average them out, they show essentially a tied race. One of the things that you got to watch out for is really how do you define those likely voters? Because there's a certain artistry to figuring out who's really going to turn out and who's not. So early on, it's kind of tricky, but now, yeah, they're all sort of converging.
Definitely. So this next question is for all three panelists. Which states do you think that we should be watching tonight? Dr. Brownell, you can start.
Well, I think everyone's attention is on places like Pennsylvania. But yeah, I think, we'll be watching those swing states. But I think also just, the recent poll that came out last weekend, of course, in Iowa, makes it clear that maybe there are other places that we can watch and kind of gain insight into some shifting trends during this election.
Yeah, Robert, you want?
Yeah, we don't know yet whether the Iowa was simply a quirk or whatever, because nobody had paid any attention to Iowa as a Republican state. But, if you look where the candidates had traveled, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, occasionally Nevada and Arizona. Those are the states that are watching. Pennsylvania is key. It's sort of almost a must-win certainly for Trump and probably for Harris as well. But that's where we're going to be watching. And we don't know about Pennsylvania because they have mail-in ballots, and there's some controversy about those and whether things will be decided tonight or will it take a couple days. That's what we have to find out.
Let me just, to chime in, I'm going to pay attention as well to North Carolina. So returns should be in rather early in the evening, and even if, whoever wins, you can tell a lot about the trajectory based on how things turn out in North Carolina.
Those are all great states to be watching. And Dr. Brownell, you've written books on the impact of Hollywood and cable news on presidential politics. What impact have both had on this election?
Well, it remains to be seen, but there's been a lot of attention to celebrity endorsements, particularly, of course, Taylor Swift coming out and endorsing Harris Volz after the debates. There was a lot of attention to that because the question is, does that endorsement actually encourage new voters to pay attention to the election and to get involved? And so certainly that has been a dominant theme and a question that has emerged. If you notice, the Harris campaign has a lot of celebrity support. The rallies were intricate performances that really generated enthusiasm. Again, does that translate into actual support and votes on Election Day? Those things kind of remain to be seen. One of the interesting things that I have found is that the cable news landscape is still part of the electoral politics, but it was sort of upstaged this year by the quest of candidates to go on podcasts. And that really does kind of build out of the cable model where you can appeal to very niche audiences through some of these direct interviews. This is part of an innovation that cable brought to political communication more broadly in the 1990s. And so you could kind of see the legacy of cable, even though it's a new medium that that candidates were prioritizing with podcasting. It was very much that narrow casting strategy.
Yes, the media will definitely play a factor this year. And Dr. McCann, you study Mexican politics as well. Mexico just elected its first female president. And if Kamala Harris wins tonight, the U.S. will as well. What do you think that relationship will be like, and especially with the issue at the southern border?
Yeah, no, that's right. The new president, I think, would be eager to, the new president of Mexico would be eager to work with either candidate, I think. She knows the U.S. very well. She has a graduate degree from the University of California. Yeah, almost certainly the border issue will be huge, but regional trade, still extremely big, a lot to work out, especially if there's any talk of tariffs and things like that. So I would look at that. Environmental issues as well, very big.
Thank you. And Dr. Browning, a lot of eyes are on the presidential election night, but there is also a lot at stake for the U.S. House and the Senate. Can you put into perspective and tell us what the campaign has been like for those races?
Well, first, as the host said, the Senate is 51 Democrats. The House has a margin of 8, so it's very tight. Most of the projections are that the Senate will go Republican. They're going to pick up West Virginia because of retirement and Montana because of the incumbent being challenged there. But people are watching other states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. If Trump does well in those states, that could help the Republicans. So if the Senate turns Republican, that has a big impact on the president because all the appointments go through the Senate, and we haven't had a Republican majority in the Senate for a while. The House is very tight. As right now, it's 8 differences. The Democrats are watching New York. They think if they can win in districts like the 19th, 17th, the 4th, and the 22nd are all ones that they want to flip from the Republicans to the Democrats. That could give a Democratic majority. On the other hand, there are lots of races that the Republicans think they can pick up. So it's probably going to be very tight. We're not going to know right away because there's some very tight races in California that will come in very late, even a couple of days later. And so whatever happens, it's going to be a margin of less than 5 either way.
And just a follow-up question for you, Dr. Browning. Do you foresee any surprises going on with the House and Senate races, and do you think that we will see a flip tonight?
Yeah, I think the Senate will flip from Democrats to Republicans. One state to watch carefully is Ohio, which has tended to be Republican, and there's a Republican challenge to a Democratic senator. So that could flip. And same way, there's a lot of people think that Baldwin is safe as a Democrat in Wisconsin, but who knows if Trump did well in Wisconsin, that could affect that race as well.
Great. And then this question is for all 3 of you. So the entire world is watching what goes on in the United States tonight. Can you put into perspective like what the impact is of this election on a global scale? Dr. McCann, we can start with you first.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, the obvious ones would be the Middle East. What's happening in Ukraine with the war with Russia. I mean, this presidential election is going to be hugely consequential. In general, I think, how engaged America is in multinational treaties and defense relationships and so on. That all is going to factor in depending on who's elected to be the next president. So.
Trump has taken a strong position on tariffs. The relationship with China, those are going to be consequential. And the other thing we shouldn't miss is that regardless of who wins, it's going to have a big impact on American parties and going forward. So we're going to be sorting out what happens to the Trump movement, what happens to the Democrats, depending upon who wins.
And Dr. Browning.
Yeah, I think, for I'm going to return back to this question of democracy and how well the democratic process works. Will there be an acceptance of the election results? Will there be, some of these, again, circulating conspiracy theories? Will there be political violence? I think that the world will be watching, and that's really significant because for the last 80 years, the United States has really been at the forefront of advancing the importance, the ideals of democracy. Of course, rhetoric frequently can contradict with reality. It's something I make all of my students analyze in history classes. But I think that this question of democracy and how it functions very tumultuous age is something people will be paying attention to across the globe.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here tonight to answer my questions and give your perspective on this election tonight. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. Let's send it back over to the anchor desk with Yumi and Jack.
Thank you, Kylan.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to our panelists. That was a really interesting discussion, and I think what we need to bring it back to is the whole rounded thoughts on the discussion of democracy. I think that was a big takeaway about how it could round people's thoughts on just the depolarization and how people are going to take away what democracy means and just what the political parties are meaning.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I think that as we think about what our panelists said, we are going to wrap it up for that, and we will see you after the break.
Center for C-SPAN, which is this organization, the CCSC, what we do is we facilitate like a bunch of organizations, different programs for Brian Lamb, which is the founder of C-SPAN. Anyone can be part of CCSC, whether it be through our various internships, our competitions, just to be involved, even like our student community meetings that we have every week. Anyone can go, you don't have to be communications or poli-sci. You just meet so many people, the connections you make is kind of crazy, the range that CCSC has. So yeah, it's just provided me so many opportunities to like kind of achieve the goals I have personally and forward to like whatever career paths I choose.
Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with election night coverage on the Purdue Channel. Once again, I'm Yumi Colombo.
And I'm Jack Brown. Right now, we don't have any results for the presidential election.
But our data team is working on it, and we'll get right back to you as soon as those results are in. The presidential election could come down to what happens in the so-called swing states, or states that could go either way, red or blue. One of those swing states is Pennsylvania.
Well, there's a bakery near Pittsburgh that's having a little fun this election season. The Oakmont Bakery is selling cookies with the faces of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
Ricky Sayer takes a bite out of this story.
Okay, where's it at? Oh my gosh.
There are all sorts of cookies at Oakmont Bakery.
We need another cookie.
The Girding family has the choice of everything from chocolate chip to cherry chewbilly. They even have
controversial cookie.
Yeah. The sort that only appears every 4 years.
Okay, so here we have the Trump cookies, and then over here we have the Harris cookies. And then just to sort of keep it fun and light and loose, we have a third party this year, which is just the Punchkis.
You know, for those who might not be a fan of either Trump or Harris.
We call it the sweetest candidate.
I think a lot of people are getting the candidate they're supporting, but then there's some people that are just like, oh, I'm going to get this candidate just so I could, chomp into them, whatever.
That would not describe the Girdings.
I think it's me.
She bought a few Trump cookies.
And I wanted to get my mom one because she's 87 years old and she loves Trump.
I think we might not eat them.
We might save them just we might cherish them for a while now.
We didn't find anyone buying Harris cookies in our short time at the bakery.
Anything else tonight?
But that doesn't mean they aren't being purchased.
We actually just ran our numbers today. Donald Trump's leading at 21,000 cookies, individual cookies. Kamala Harris is at 6,200, and the sweetest candidate, it's about 9,800.
Oh, yep, there you go. Hope that's a good sign, right?
The bakery did the same candidate cookie special in 2020, but the tally of which candidate cookie most customers ordered didn't prove to be an accurate prediction.
In fact, the tally was wrong, but who knows? We'll see what happens this time around. Control of the U.S. Senate will also be important to watch tonight. Remember, it could be difficult for a president to get their agenda passed if the legislative branch is controlled by the opposite political party. Looking first at the Wisconsin Senate race between Tammy Baldwin, the incumbent Democratic candidate, and businessman Eric Hovde, the Republican candidate. According to Politico, Baldwin's polling lead has shrunk in recent weeks, which poses a threat for Democrats in the Senate. Candidates disagree on abortion, the economy, and wealth. Moving on to Montana, a state that usually doesn't decide elections may now hold the cards for the Senate race. Democratic incumbent Jon Tester is running to stay in his seat for another 6 years, but political outsider Tim Sheehy has proven a real challenge for the senator as he holds a slight majority in the polls currently. Both candidates deeply appeal to the veteran population of this state, holding one of the highest veteran populations in the country. Tester runs with his experience as chair of the Veteran Affairs Committee, and Sheehy runs as a combat-wounded Navy SEAL who received the Purple Heart Medal among other combat decorations. Both Wisconsin and Montana Senate races could flip the Senate towards either party. Stay tuned for more Senate race updates.
Would you stand in line for hours to vote? What if it was rainy, cold, snowy, windy, or unbearably hot?
Could the weather play a role in voter turnout? That's the question we sent reporter Alex Kirkove to answer.
The weather around us is always impacting our mood, behavior, and even health. So we decided to investigate if Election Day is truly impacted by the weather and if it alters the people's decision to go out and head to the polls. We're looking later on today in our forecast, and there is a chance for rain around 5 p.m. So we decided to ask voters if that impacts their chance or if they think it impacts other people's chance to vote.
Not for me. I mean, I'll come out regardless.
I feel like it definitely would, just because it's like it would take them the effort to just go there, walk there and stuff, especially if they're on the fence. I feel like it would definitely make them like lean one way and just not vote. But yeah.
Did you have any of your friends that were maybe on the fence of voting and you think that the weather could have impacted that and them coming out today?
Oh yeah, definitely. 100%, yeah.
We also asked, do you think you're more likely to vote if weather is warm or moderate?
I think people are always more motivated to get out in the sunshine and that good weather, so that'll probably drive more people to the polls.
I wouldn't say it would push me more. I would say if it's just the negative, so if it was cloudy and rainy, then it would make it less likely for me to go out.
As you can see, there is a chance for rain around 5 p.m., and that impacts the commuters that are leaving from work and going to vote before the polls close at 6 p.m. A study done in February of 2023 looks at how weather excludes marginal voters from turning out. Their outcome of this was Election Day rainfall reduces turnout by 0.95 percentage points per centimeter, while more sunshine increases turnout. Reporting from West Lafayette City Hall, here on Election Day, I'm Alex Kirkove.
Thanks, Alex. Still to come, we've got a student panel from Dr. Catherine Brownell's American Presidency course.
We'll discuss what we can learn from studying past presidential elections.
Now here's a live look at our election night watch party from Honors Hall. We'll be right back. It's Election Night in America, Tuesday, November 5th. Who will be the 47th President of the United States, and who will control Congress? Stay with us. More live coverage is straight ahead.
We are energetic, we are motivating, and we are unique.
I don't think you can beat Quidditch.
How many of you guys have heard of Gary, Indiana?
The program allows students to finish their bachelor's degree and also get an online master's degree that overlap during their last year at Purdue.
Students can more quickly work towards a graduate degree while concurrently starting their professional careers.
The online program allows them to kind of go at their own pace, and so they're not having to abide by the academic calendar.
And our goal is that this would make you even more compelling for your next opportunity in the workforce.
We're loud, we're fast, we are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is hurling.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The club's been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.
Baseball in general is just a fun group of guys that we're looking to play baseball at the next level, and it's a fun way to have some people come together and play a game we like. The guys that are a nice fit to the team as well as good at baseball, so that's really a big piece of the puzzle to joining the team, and you can get a lot of information just reaching out.
We are excited to have a group of students in the studio tonight.
They are here as part of a class assignment for Dr. Catherine Brownell's American Presidency course.
What a great time to take that class during a presidential election. Kylan McElroy is back to moderate our second panel of the evening, and we're going to ask this group to apply what they've learned so far this semester. Kylan?
Thanks, Jack and Yumi. And we're going to focus on history and putting this election into perspective, but also see what history can teach us about today. I've got Aubrey Mann, Carter Delworth, and Drew Kolzowski here with me tonight. Thank you all for being here. So my first question for all of you is, how can history and past elections help us predict the outcomes of this election? We can start with you over here.
So I would say that sometimes it's really hard to predict things just by using history. As a historian, you kind of learn that you can't just look at the past and come up with a definitive answer to how things are going to go in the future. But there are a lot of things that you can kind of look to with past elections to get a sense of how things are, might be going based on like certain patterns. So one election that I kind of look at in the past that looks a lot like 2024 is the 1960 election, where you have JFK against Richard Nixon. And a lot of people tend to have the preconception that the election was super not close. It was like a very one game by Kennedy because he was this very charismatic person and he could go on camera, and there was a very public and nowadays there's kind of myths about what would you call it? There was a very publicized television debate that happened with Kennedy and Nixon, where Nixon looks like this very sad person, and it's regardless, it was a very, very close race, and I think the popular vote was maybe off by 110,000 between each candidate, and 1960 just looks a lot like 2024 because you kind of didn't have a sense of what was going to happen before it happened. So there were 24 swing states. In this election there are 7. So, and at the end of the election, the results were contested until Richard Nixon ended up conceding. So I think, kind of looking at, are the results going to be contested in this election, and how close are things actually? I think it's going to look a lot like it did in 1960.
Those are some great points to make. You want to give your opinion next?
Yeah, so I second that history isn't
particularly good at determining future outcomes. It's mostly good at determining past trends. And kind of with similar players, I think that the 1968 election is also a little bit reflective of today's election, though, like I was saying, there's not necessarily a solid election to go back on that is exactly the same as today. But the 1968 election had LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, dropping out of the race somewhat unexpectedly at the time. And that's obviously reflective of Joe Biden dropping out of the race, refusing to run again. And then similar players as in Nixon was running in 1960, but he re-ran in 1968, and then he did win that election. And it was kind of a tumultuous time for the Democratic Party trying to figure out a new candidate to stand behind. And I feel that what is different about this election than the 1968 election would be that right when Joe Biden dropped out, immediately after Harris did announce her plans for running for president, and then also with this presidency, or with this presidential run, there really hasn't been a lot of debate or about that Democratic candidate.
Thank you. Isaac?
Yeah, so I completely agree about the 1968 election. And it really is hard to say how history can predict the future. But I would like to point out that there's a very strong history of incumbents doing worse when the economy is in a downturn, and especially when people perceive the economy to be in a downturn. And I really think that you could look at the sentiment of people today and say, well, you know, a lot of people feel that the economy is in a downturn. They see the consumer price index going up, and they're like, wow, it's hard for me to pay for my groceries. This makes it harder for them to vote for an incumbent. In this election, you could say there is no incumbent, as Harris is not the current president, but she is the vice president, and that may have some impact on how voters make their decisions this election.
That's a great point. Carter?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to keep talking about 1968 a lot, but obviously it's incredibly difficult to predict how elections might go. But 1968 really has a very striking similarities. You know, obviously LBJ dropped out a lot earlier than Biden did, but he still went through a single primary. Biden went through a few primaries. So you can definitely look at that, and you look at, you know, his vice president, Hubert Humphrey, ended up getting on that Democrat ticket, ended up losing. You know, who knows what happens with Harris in these next few days, but that's definitely something to look at.
Thank you. So my next question, has there been any election where a third-party candidate has influenced the results of the election, and what would have to happen for a third-party candidate to be a serious contender in the race?
So there is, you know, a number of elections where you've seen major third-party candidates, and a lot of them have actually happened kind of in the last 100 years or so. One of them being Teddy Roosevelt, of course, in the 1912 election. But that specific election does kind of outline the problems with being a third-party candidate. Teddy Roosevelt split the Republican vote in 1912 between the old Republican Party, which was supporting Taft, and the progressive Republicans, which were supporting Roosevelt. So when you're a third-party candidate in a first-past-the-post voting system, you run the risk of taking away the votes from the candidate who's closest to you. So for Teddy Roosevelt, by splitting the Republican vote and going bull moose, this progressive candidacy, he took away Republican votes from the incumbent Taft, and Wilson ended up winning. So, you know, you also have kind of other similar situations, more recently being Ross Perot. Some argue that he took away some of the popular vote from the Republican candidate, and that ended up with Bill Clinton winning. So, and of course he got 20 million votes at the time, which is certainly not insignificant, even though the Electoral College didn't, you know, it doesn't add up the same way.
Right.
Sorry. So yeah, I agree that those are the two elections that mostly come to mind, 1912 and the 1992 and 1996 elections with Ross Perot. So with those elections, also I want to point out that there were more than just one third-party candidates, and I feel that that is also an aspect of third-party candidates in elections is the kind of various directions that they can go and the various directions that their campaigns may be leaning that would impact or really be reflective of that current election state. So currently we're debating a lot about swing states, and when you look at those ballots, they're oftentimes the states with a lot of votes maybe going to Jill Stein right now, or Cornel West, or Kennedy, and that is really a part of third-party candidacies in elections that is often overlooked, is how many different players are involved.
That's a great point that you mentioned swing states. Do any of you predict any surprises with swing states tonight? Anybody can answer this one.
Yeah, I can answer it. I mean, obviously it's incredibly difficult to predict these swing states, especially with a lot of them being within 1 or 2, even 3 points. So obviously it's really a toss-up with any of those states. I do predict Kamala to retain the blue wall that Biden won back in 2020. I think Wisconsin and Michigan are both most likely going to swing to the Democrat Party this year.
Any other predictions on the panel?
I think that it's really hard to predict swing states this year, even more than in previous years. I think that there is more of a chance in this 21st century for there to be third-party candidates that have more of an effect on swing states. And I think one place where that could be a potential make-or-break situation is, in Pennsylvania, where it's really close right now. Trump and Harris were in the same like 2 towns, like less than 30 miles away from each other just yesterday. And so I really think Pennsylvania is one of the ones to look out for where it might be leaning blue, but it could definitely go red if the third-party candidates end up taking, especially Jill Stein, ends up taking some of the Democrat vote there.
Definitely. Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight. This has been a great discussion. Let's take it over back to Jack and Yumi at the desk.
Thanks, Kylan.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to our student panelists. Now that we are back, we actually have some information from our data team. So as we said at the very beginning of the show, the polls closed at 6 o'clock for Kentucky and Indiana. And if you're just tuning in with us, earlier we said that those results weren't in, but right now we have some updates. So for Indiana, Donald Trump came in at about 57.9%, with Kamala Harris coming in at 40.6%. And for Kentucky, we have Donald Trump at 66.3% and Kamala Harris at 32.6%. And for governor, we have Indiana's governor Mike Braun at 55.4% and Jennifer McCormick at 40.9%. Just so we say that, we are going to wrap that up. But up next, we will go back out live to Honors Hall. Our election night watch party is in full swing. You're watching the Purdue channel, and we'll be back in a moment.
Imagine a world where Olympics and Paralympics are unified as one, and where all athletes at all levels have equal opportunities to play and perform at their full potential.
Athletics has been such an influential and transformative aspect of my life. So to me, RISE is about ensuring that every person that has the desire to participate in sport has the opportunity to do so.
This organization is about recognition. We believe in recognizing excellence where it is found, especially in Paralympic sports.
RISE is about driving change in our community and beyond. We hope that through our events and initiatives, we can galvanize people for our cause and inspire them to create an ever-growing network to help achieve our mission.
It's about connecting people of various backgrounds and who truly care about creating meaningful change together.
We develop projects and hold events to bring people together at the interface of inclusivity, sports, and engineering.
Our goal is to promote the equality of all sports and to improve sports performance and accessibility.
Join us so that you can have a major contribution in creating meaningful change.
Pi Sigma Alpha, the Political Science Honor Society, is currently hosting a game of Kahoot at the election night watch party. There's also a prediction game happening, where you can make a guess at which party will control Congress after tonight.
A lot is happening over there in Honors Hall this evening. Let's go to reporter Becca Schumann, who's live in Honors Hall. How are things going, Becca?
Why did you guys choose to come out to the watch party tonight instead of just watching at home?
So, I mean, I honestly just thought it'd be fun to come here. I saw it on the Instagram and like, instead of just sitting at home by myself, I thought might as well be a bunch of people, you know? We're all so excited.
First, there really wasn't a place for me to watch it, but then also I just was curious about what other people, especially other Purdue students, were going to be voting for, and I think that's probably the best spot to do it is here.
So I know you said you heard about it on the Instagram. How did you hear about the watch party tonight?
My girlfriend sent me the post.
Nice. And why do you guys think it's important that students are involved in the election and to know that their vote matters?
So, I mean, I feel like as Americans, voting is our like primary way of engaging with the government, and so I feel the national election, especially for students, when it's our like kind of our first chance to get to participate in all of this, I think it's really important to like put our foot in and like show the country like what we want as students, the country to look like, you know?
Yeah, and it always kind of seems like your vote doesn't matter nationally, especially if you're like a Democrat in a red state or a Republican in a blue state, but local elections like senatorial or even like down to your mayor or city council, those are like where it really matters. And so that's probably the most important thing for people to recognize.
And did you guys choose to vote today or did you choose to vote early?
Early.
I voted mail-in.
Awesome, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for sticking with Jack and I as we began tonight's coverage of the 2024 election. A lot more to come.
Regina and Cole will join you after the break. You're watching the Purdue Channel.
If I could describe Boiler School DC in one word, I would say insightful. I've done a couple internships in DC, but this experience was different and opened my eyes into what other aspects of DC has to offer in networking and relationships as well.
If I could describe BGDC in one word, I would say eye-opening. I've been to DC a couple times before, but I have had nowhere close to an experience as immersive or as informative as the BGDC experience.
If you're interested in politics and you want to get into working in government, this is a good experience for you.
It was something I initially myself really wanted to do, but I know there were a lot of people that might be on more of the fence about it. And I truly think BGDC was worth every penny, every time I did a reflection. Absolutely worth it.
If I can describe BGDC in one word, it's life-changing.
Hola from Spain. G'day, mates. Buenos dias.
Bonjour.
Hello from South Korea. I'm studying abroad in Valencia, Spain this semester. I'm studying abroad in Sydney, Australia. I'm studying abroad in Madrid, Spain.
Studying at Seoul National University.
At Issy Supero in Toulouse, France.
And I'm really getting to enjoy meeting all the new people and the culture.
How different it is from Purdue University.
It is an absolutely fantastic experience. I'm living my best life.
I can't wait to see you guys all overseas soon. A bientôt.
Adios. Nos vemos de España.
We're loud, we're fast, we are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is Harlech.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The Cubs been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.
I was too busy. I'm sorry.
I revere this office.
but I love my country more.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much.
There's an energy out there right now. I'm convinced that we are going to win the White House, the Senate, and the House.
I believe we're going to hold our majority, but it will be close.
With the future president of the United States!
Donald Trump has to win this election.
And I would expect there to be a line, which is very exciting, that energy that we're feeling. There's a lot of people participating.
I would stand here as long as it takes to vote.
Many paths, in fact, to victory, and I feel very good about where we are.
Groceries have gone up like triple, and I'm hoping that people are going to think about that when they go into that voting booth.
You got a choice in this election.
By every measure, she has demonstrated that she's ready.
So, here we have the Trump cookies, and then over here we have the Harris cookies.
Trump-a-mania, run wild!
That's unbelievable. I had to say it.
That's just his style, but that's the style that got him all the support.
Whereas if we heard that out of our loved ones, we'd be like, okay, Grandpa, it's time to take your keys.
But secure our borders, help our veterans and help the U.S. people.
We want to make sure that, we have somebody that's want to support women and abortion rights. It's very important to us.
Now the fate of our nation is in your hands. It really is. We win this state, we win the whole thing.
Make no mistake, we will win.
Hello, and thank you for sticking with our live election night coverage. It's now 7 o'clock on this Tuesday night, November 5th. I'm Regina Ortiz.
And I'm Cole Sand. We'll be your anchors for the next hour. More polls are closing, and we expect to bring you more results this hour as they come in. We've got a data team working to gather those returns as we speak. Let's take a look at what else we have for you this hour. The Political Discourse Club will be live with reporter Julia Blanford, breaking down some of the most important issues facing the U.S. this campaign season.
We've also got students from the Political Science course 411, which focuses on the structure and function of Congress. And Cole, there's also a lot of attention on the presidential race tonight, but we can't forget about the House and Senate. Republicans and Democrats are both hoping to keep or gain seats tonight, not lose them.
Yeah, that's right, and the balance of power will be decided tonight as well. Which party will control the House and Senate? Those students will give us their predictions. Should be exciting to hear how they will apply what they've been learning this semester.
All polls are now closed in all counties of Indiana and Kentucky, but if voters got in line before those polls closed, they can still vote. So there's a chance voting is still going on. Cole, where else are polls now closing?
Yeah, quite a few states. In fact, Regina, let's take a look at the map. Vermont, South Carolina, Virginia, and the swing state of Georgia, too. Most of Florida as well. Basically, anywhere you see the blue or gray on this map, the polls are officially closed. We'll get to a few more to add to the list at 7:30 as well.
Today, Americans are voting in a pivotal race between former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris. The journey up until this point will be considered one of the most historically significant presidential races so far. Not only do both candidates have a stark contrast in visions, but we are amidst a huge moment where we could elect the nation's first female president. Let's recap their campaigns and how we got to this moment.
Trump secured the Republican nomination with a promise to bring back his 2016 policies, focusing on a stronger America through economic growth, immigration reform, and national security. His rallies have drawn large crowds, energized by his calls for restoring conservative values and undoing recent changes in Washington. On the Democratic side, Harris campaigned on themes of unity and progress. Building on the Biden administration's work, she is focused on expanding healthcare access, advancing climate action, and addressing social justice. Her platform has resonated with young voters, minorities, and those seeking continuity with a fresh approach.
Throughout the debates and campaign events, the candidates underscored their differences. Trump criticized the administration's handling of the economy and border issues, positioning himself as the experienced leader to restore stability. Harris, in turn, highlighted Trump's diverse rhetoric and presented herself as a forward-looking leader ready to tackle modern issues. As voters continue to head to the polls today, they are making a choice between two sharply different paths for America's future. The outcome of this election will shape the nation for years to come. We mentioned the battle for control of Congress is also up for grabs tonight. There are also 11 states that will be electing their governor tonight. Cole, tell us about those states.
Yeah, that's right, Regina. 11 gubernatorial races, but only one is expected to be a toss-up, and that's in New Hampshire, where two women are running to replace the outgoing Republican governor, Chris Sununu. This race is going to come down to turnout. Republican Katie Ayotte is taking on Democrat Joyce Craig. Here at Purdue University, we are located in the state of Indiana, where voters will also be selecting a new governor. Indiana, being a red state, is expected to remain in control of a Republican governor. But this race has tightened a little bit according to recent polls and campaign fundraising reports. Current Governor Eric Holcomb is term limited. Republican U.S. Senator Mike Braun is hoping to succeed him, and he's being challenged by Democrat and former state superintendent of education Jennifer McCormick, as well as a strong third-party candidate in Donald Rainwater.
Thanks, Cole. Right now, our election night watch party continues inside the John Martinson Honors College. There is trivia, games, discussion, and of course, live coverage of election night results, plus free food. The party goes until 10 o'clock tonight.
Yes, let's check in on the fun in Honors Hall with reporter Julia Blandford. Julia, how's it going?
Thank you, Regina and Cole. I am here today at Honors College with the Purdue Political Discourse Club. Here is the president, Jose Gutierrez Perez, and here are the rest of its members. So guys, one of the hot button topics for this year's election is about the economy. What do you think, how important do you think it is for the voters today?
I mean, personally, I think that's one of the most important issues for voters today. The economy is everything, ultimately. Being able to make a living, provide for your family, that's everything, really. So I think that's going to be on a lot of people's minds come this election cycle.
Absolutely. And as Bill Clinton campaigned on, it's the economy, stupid. Everyone is affected by the economy. Everyone cares about the economy.
All right, and then another hot button issue is immigration. So what are your thoughts on that? How do you think that it impacts what people are going to vote for this year?
I believe that immigration is a big topic this year. Obviously, we don't want illegal immigrants coming to this country, but the process of bringing those people into this country has become harder and harder every single year. So I think being able to make the process easier for people to come into our country is genuinely a good topic and something that I think a lot of people are trying to strive for.
And so how accessible do you think it is to get out to the polls this year? Did you see a difference in accessibility or?
I think at Purdue University especially, we did a pretty good job of getting people to go to the polls. We had go-karts going around all day even though it was rainy. I do think, though, in bigger cities, it is hard for people that have jobs to go to the polls since they're so early in the day. I think making it something like a national holiday so it makes it easier for people to go out and vote would definitely help people get their votes out.
I will say, just for Purdue in particular, it was a little disappointed that there was not a dedicated voting spot on Purdue's campus this election cycle when there had been for the midterms in the last presidential election. I do applaud them for doing busing, moving people, providing buses to move people to voting areas, but I think that was a little disappointing for me, I think.
I did mail in absentee ballot, so I don't know how much I can speak on that, but I did hear from some of my friends that the lines were really long. So.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think generally speaking, there's because of the proliferation of absentee ballots, of early voting, I think generally speaking, voting is becoming more accessible to Americans.
All right, and then another hot button issue is Israel and Palestine right now. How do you think that's affecting what people are voting for and how they're voting?
I think that's absolutely driving a young voter turnout, like more than anything for this election. Like a lot of, particularly young people, care about this issue a lot. Like you can see that all over social media, on college campuses, everywhere. This is going to drive young voter turnout, which I think will help the Democrats, frankly.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that people thought that it would help Democrats. I always thought that I heard that it would help Republicans, but that's interesting.
In what way would it help Republicans, do you think?
I had heard that it was splitting the vote away from Kamala, so.
And then another way that the Democratic Party, they were targeting a lot of young voters, whereas the Republican Party was targeting older voters, it seems. How do you think that contributed to the generational divide in voting?
Well, I think it's also kind of with the way that we absorb media nowadays, a lot of young voters are getting media from quick content like TikTok, Instagram, and just the way the algorithm is built, it helps promote extreme views. I think not many of us read the paper anymore or watch the news, so that's why more young people are leaning towards more extremist views is because of stuff like social media.
And how do you think that the Democratic Party can attract older voters and then the Republican Party could attract younger voters?
I think that a way for us to get more younger voters to kind of be more politically sound is by just being more engaged. I think that's the only way.
All right, thank you so much. Reporting.
Thanks, Julia. While we wait for more results tonight, let's talk about the news. The news cycle around this election is ever-changing. It's a lot to take in. Are students paying attention?
Yeah, it's got us wondering, where do students get their news? Studies show it's most likely from social media and podcasts, but where exactly? Reporter Yumi Colombo went out to Memorial Mall to find out.
And where would you say you get your news from?
I try to get my news from CNN. I usually check my CNN app every day.
Mainly social media and whatever shows up in my news feed, I guess.
I get word of mouth from my parents, from my boyfriend.
I get a lot of stuff like online social media, like TikTok, Twitter. I have a New York Times subscription.
I get my news from the New York Times and the Washington Post because we have a free subscription through Purdue.
Thanks, Yumi. And whether you've been aware of it or not, you've probably been targeted by misinformation or disinformation.
For some help in deciphering what's real and what's fake, take a look at these tips from the Cornell University Library. First, consider the source. Click away from the page and look at the site the article was posted on. Remember that headlines can be an effort to get clicks, so make sure the author is credible. Be sure to read the whole story. Check the date to make sure the story is recent, and ask yourself if it is a joke or satire. Check your biases. Consider if your own beliefs could affect your own judgment.
Up next, we'll take you back out to the John Martinson Honors College. That's where our election night watch party is underway, with games, discussion, and other events alongside the election results.
Our reporter Julia Blandford is there with the Purdue Political Discourse Club. We'll hear from them on a few important topics from this election season. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
We are energetic, we are motivating, and we are unique.
I don't think you can beat Quidditch.
How many of you guys have heard of Gary, Indiana?
The program allows students to finish their bachelor's degree and also get an online master's degree that overlap during their last year at Purdue.
Students can more quickly work towards a graduate degree while concurrently starting their professional careers.
The online program allows them to kind of go at their own pace, and so they're not having to abide by the academic calendar.
And our goal is that this would make you even more compelling for your next opportunity in the workforce.
We're loud, we're fast, we are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is hurling.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The club's been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.
Baseball in general is just a fun group of guys that we're looking to play baseball at the next level, and it's a fun way to have some people come together and play a game we like. The guys that are a nice fit to the team as well as good at baseball, so that's really a big piece of the puzzle to joining the team, and you can get a lot of information just reaching out.
Here's another live look at the watch party over in Honors Hall.
Happening this hour, a game of Who Said It, led by the Honors Serves organization. Plus, the Purdue Pettigrew speech and debate team continues to run a debate. And there's plenty of food as we await more results tonight. We'll have another live report in just a bit.
Regina, did you know that early voting is not available in every state?
That's right, Cole. Every voting was offered here in Indiana and for one day here on Purdue's campus. In the state of Connecticut, though, this is the first election where early voting was an option, and it went over pretty well. Mark Soodall talked to some Constitution state voters casting their early ballots.
The polls are open. It's now 10 a.m.
The fact that I'm able to be here and fit it in my schedule and not have to wait until the 5th of November and just kind of move on with my day.
Instead of your neighborhood polling site, early voting happens at one or two central locations in each municipality, usually town or city hall. With a major presidential race, other states are already seeing record crowds.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great option for people who may struggle to get to the polls. I have 2 kids under 5. I really don't want to vote with them, and my husband has to work that day in the city, so I'm happy to do it.
We're leaving for Florida, so we wanted to make sure we got our vote in. Very important this year.
In addition to electing a new president and vice president, voters in Connecticut will also be making their choices for several offices, including U.S. and state senator and U.S. and state representative.
Early voting in Connecticut, including weekdays and on weekends, ending on November 3rd.
Connecticut also offers same-day registration and voting. Registration requires proof of identity and residency.
Just ahead this hour, a look at how early voting went here at Purdue.
Plus, we'll continue to update you on results coming into our newsroom. And here in the studio, we've got a group of students from Dr. Robert Browning's congressional election class, because in addition to electing a new president, at stake tonight is control of Congress. We'll get their predictions for the House and Senate majorities. Stay with us. More live election coverage is minutes away.
Baseball in general is just just a fun group of guys that we're looking to play baseball at the next level, and it's a fun way to have some people come together and play a game we like. The guys that are a nice fit to the team as well as good at baseball. So that's really a big piece of the puzzle to joining the team, and you can get a lot of information just reaching out.
Football. It's the best time of the year. You know what else is great? The world's largest and fastest mascot. You can't have Purdue football without the trains. Look for the Reamer Club outside Stewart Center, 12 to 5 p.m. on Fridays before home football games, for your chance to ride the Boilermaker Special for free. See you then.
I mean, every year's different, but it hasn't changed that much. Our league is just ominous, and you better lace them up tight and be ready to play every night. If not, you're going to get beat.
We're loud, we're fast, we are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is Harlech.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The club's been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.
I was too busy. I'm sorry.
Welcome back. The time is now 7:23 p.m. on this election night, 2024. I'm Regina Ortiz, and we now have new confirmed information. Cole?
Yes, let's check in with the data team on the results we have so far. So we can confirm that Indiana and Kentucky are both going to Donald Trump. In Indiana, Donald Trump won 60.7% of the vote so far, and in Kentucky, 72.5% of the vote. Indiana has 11 electoral college votes, and Kentucky has 8 electoral college votes. So that puts Trump at 19 votes to begin the night.
Now let's talk about Congress. Not only will we be electing a new president in November, but control of the House and Senate will also be decided. Currently, Democrats narrowly control the Senate 51 to 49, and Republicans hold the House by a margin of 8 members, 222 to 212. Here's one of the races we're keeping an eye on. Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz is holding just 4-point lead over his Democratic challenger, Representative Colin Allred. That's according to a poll released in September from Emerson College and The Hill. Cruz is seeking a third term, and Democrats hope Allred can oust him. Allred is a former NFL player and civil rights attorney. Cruz also has name recognition as a prominent senator and former presidential candidate. This matchup is expected to be one of the most expensive races in Texas history.
Now we head down to Arizona for the very close race between Democratic Representative Ruben Gallego and his opponent, Republican Kari Lake. Lake has already become notorious for her past candidacy in 2022, which was for governor. At the time, Lake lost in one of the closest gubernatorial races of the election cycle. Following that, she denied the losses of both herself and former President Trump and made many lawsuits to try to overturn the results, none of which were successful. On the other hand, Gallego has been known as a strong left-leaning political force in the past. For this election cycle, Gallego is going for a more moderate approach in his hopes of gaining swing voters. In most polls, Lake is trailing to Gallego, in some instances, by as much as 10 points.
Another race that many have their eyes on tonight is Michigan, where former Republican U.S. Representative Mike Rogers is battling Democratic U.S. Representative Elisa Slotkin for the open seat. Yeah. These two Senate candidates faced off in a live television debate in October. Rogers' campaign priorities are focusing on the economy, China, the southern border, and crime. Meanwhile, Slotkin's campaign focuses on protecting women's rights, persevering democracy, keeping communities safe, and defending the middle class.
Voting for every big spending bill that came down the pipe in support 100% of the Biden-Harris administration has cost us all of these costs in our groceries, in our gasoline, in our housing prices.
Mr. Rogers has voted against middle-class tax cuts over and over and over again in his record. It's constant. So the idea that somehow he cares about the middle class and middle-class tax cuts, his voting record says the opposite.
Rogers has been endorsed by former President Donald Trump. Slotkin has been endorsed by current Michigan Senator Debbie Stabenow. She announced last year she would not seek re-election after serving in Congress since 1997.
And Cole, here's an interesting scenario. There's a strong possibility tonight that both chambers of Congress could flip. Right now, the Senate is controlled by Democrats and the House is controlled by Republicans. But could the Senate go to the Republicans? And could the House go to the Democrats?
And that would still make it tough for whoever becomes president to push their agenda through the legislative branch. Let's dive more into this possibility with reporter Julia Benbrook.
Recent polling shows that both chambers could flip. If that happened, it would be the first time in more than 230 years of congressional elections that both chambers changed partisan control in the opposite direction at the same time.
Polls show that something unprecedented could happen this year. The House could flip from Republican to Democratic control, while the Senate could flip from Democratic to Republican control. In the House, all 435 seats are up for grabs. Republicans currently control this chamber with a very slim majority.
I'm spending these final closing weeks in the swing states, in blue states, in toss-up districts for the House. I'm absolutely convinced. There's an energy out there right now. I'm convinced that we are going to win the White House, the Senate, and the House.
But Democrats need a net pickup of just 4 seats to flip the lower chamber. In the Senate, currently controlled by Democrats, only a third of the 100 seats are on the ballot every cycle. To flip it, Republicans need a net pickup of either 1 seat if the incoming vice president is a Republican, or 2 seats if the incoming vice president is a Democrat.
It's basically going to be about getting our voters out in the ground game and making sure that we get people out. I believe we're going to hold our majority, but it will be close. It's going to go right down to the wire.
The most vulnerable Democratic incumbents in the Senate are up for re-election in states that Trump twice carried comfortably. John Tester in Montana and Sherrod Brown in Ohio.
A year ago today, Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnson became Speaker of the House after a split in the party led Republicans to oust then Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The challenges Republicans have faced leading with such a slim majority highlight that just winning the chamber may not be enough to get policy items across the finish line. The margin of that win may matter as well. Reporting in the Capitol, I'm Julia Benbrook.
We'll continue our conversation about the control of Congress in a few minutes, when we'll be joined by students in Dr. Robert Browning's Political Science 411 course about Congress. We'll even get their predictions on some of the races. That's coming up in about 10 minutes. During the course of this election, all eyes have been on the swing states. And there's 7 of them: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin will serve as crucial contributions to each of the candidates' electoral votes. According to News Nation polling shows Donald Trump and Kamala Harris being neck and neck in each of the swing states.
The final pre-election New York Times survey shows Harris ahead in 4 of the 7 states, with Trump up in 1 and a tie in 2 others. However, polling averages show no candidate leads by more than 2.5 points in any of the 7 key battleground states. In Pennsylvania, the state that may be considered the key to winning the election, a Siena survey shows both candidates tied at 48%. Trump and Harris are also tied in Michigan, both at 47%. Harris holds a slight lead in North Carolina and New York, and a slightly larger lead in Wisconsin. Trump holds a paralleled marginal lead in both Nevada and Arizona, coming in at 49% to Harris's 45%, according to Siena polls.
Up next, a live interview from the Honors College.
Plus, we've got another student panel in the studio tonight. We'll be discussing the battle for control of Congress. Will the chambers flip? Will one party be in control, or will Congress stay divided? And what does that mean for the next president? Don't go away. More election night coverage is straight ahead.
Honors College. A lot of games, food, and discussion happening, and that party is going to keep on rocking till 10 o'clock.
So there's still time to make your way over there. Several student organizations came up with the games, trivia, and discussion topics. Tonight wouldn't be possible without their help. We now have new confirmed information. Kamala has now won Vermont over with 66%, and Vermont has over 3 votes.
Yeah, we'll be bringing more live votes for you, results for you coming up later.
The Center for C-SPAN Scholarship and Engagement, also known as CCSE, is a national research center here on Purdue University's campus. Our connection to C-SPAN goes back to Purdue alum and C-SPAN founder Brian Lamb. He's also the namesake of the Brian Lamb School of Communication.
CCSE offers a number of resources and opportunities for students, and we're going to learn more about how you can take advantage of them. Let's go live to reporter Delaney Bowles, who's with Managing Director Andrea Langrish. Delaney?
You're good. That's right. We're here at the Honors Hall where the Election Night Watch Party is taking place. And I'm joined here by Andrea Langrish with CCSE. Andrea, tell us a little bit about the many opportunities that CCSE has for Purdue students.
Absolutely, Delaney. So the Center for C-SPAN Scholarship and Engagement has a lot of programming available for students, to include everyone's favorite pizza and politics. We also have the Boilers Go to DC programs, which include the BGDC Maymester and the BGDC Summer Scholars Internship Program. Maymester is a 2-week-long program, and the Summer Scholars Program will take you to Washington, D.C. for an internship for the entire summer.
Awesome. Now, Boilers Go to DC, or otherwise known as BGDC, is a program that anyone of any major can apply for, correct? And if so, tell us a little bit about that application process.
Application's very easy, and absolutely, we take students from every single major. You simply fill out the form, make sure you have 2 letters of recommendation for the Summer Scholars Program, and we do an interview with you, and yeah, you're off to Washington, D.C.
All right, sounds good. You heard that here. Now, you also try to connect current Purdue students with alums working in DC. What do you feel are some of the benefits that students can get from having those mentors?
Absolutely. So you get someone who has your back in Washington, D.C., who's interested in your success, and it's also your early network of professional peers. And so it's a great opportunity for students to get an alumni mentor.
Okay, awesome. In addition to that, here on campus, you also offer paid internships. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you look for in an intern?
Absolutely. So when I'm looking for an intern, I'm looking for somebody who has an interest in media, politics, government, people that are interested in video, marketing, creativity, editorial, research. We have 3 different types of internships. We have marketing and production, marketing and publicity. We have video production, and we have editorial and research. So we encourage students who are interested to apply for the internships.
Okay, well, awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. And thank you to CCSE for being involved and leading the charge here tonight at the watch party. Thank you.
Thanks, Delaney. What a benefit it is to have CCSE here at Purdue.
And as Andrea mentioned, several opportunities like DC Summer Scholars, Boilers Go to DC, and internships are still available. Visit the CCSE at Purdue website for more information.
Although the presidential race is a big focus tonight, we can't forget about the election races for the U.S. House and Senate.
This is expected to be one of the most expensive elections for those races. At the end of the night, will we know who controls each chamber? We're going to discuss the possibilities with our expert student panel, the students of Dr. Robert Browning's Political Science 411 course, which focuses on the structure and function of the U.S. Congress. Joanne Newbay is back as our panel moderator. Joanne.
Thank you. That's right. I'm Joanne Newbay, and I'm here with some of the students from 411 Political Science course on Congress. What an exciting time to be taking this course during the election. Tell me first about what you've been learning this semester.
So we've been learning about Congress structure in both the House and Senate, so that covers a multitude of things like committees and proceedings, in depth on how bills are passed, how bills are discussed, how elections work, and we've been looking at a lot of it through the lens of the C-SPAN archive, which Dr. Browning runs here at Purdue. and sort of using these example clips from the C-SPAN archive to illustrate these different topics in the study of Congress structure.
Wow, that's so great. So let's talk about what it is at stake here tonight. In your opinion, based on what you've learned in class this semester.
So yeah, there's definitely a lot at stake. The control of both chambers of Congress is at stake. There's very thin margins on both the House and Senate. Currently, the House is controlled by the Republicans and the Senate is controlled by the Democrats. Both of those may flip. One may flip. We don't know. I have some predictions, but obviously things happen. We don't know. And the Congress is super vital to the legislative process. Congress is the branch of government that makes the laws. The president plays a huge role, of course, very important, but it is the Congress that brings legislation to the floor, that sends legislation to the president's desk. So who controls each chamber of Congress is vital.
Okay, yeah. Anyone else?
I think it's important to notice that our last Congress was a very underwhelming one. It was the Congress that passed the least amount of bills to go to the president's office in a long time. So I think that's a heavy factor in people voting tonight and early voting in times past, because a lot of things weren't changed. And I feel like that's a big thing that electors and people expect for elections.
Okay. Right now, the margins are thin in the House and especially in the Senate, like you said. What will control mean to the majority?
So control of the House will mean a lot to the majority. For the minority party in the House, it is very hard to get any legislation you want passed or get your opinions heard. And really, the minority party has to work together with the majority party, has to create that bipartisanship to get their policies goals enacted. So whoever wins the majority tonight will have a huge advantage in terms of advancing policy goals. In the Senate, the majority is still very important. However, things like the filibuster do give the minority party in the Senate a little bit more of an edge than the minority party in the House. But control is super important for legislation.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, control is definitely super important because in the House especially, bills can be shut down really easily if there's nobody, the Speaker of the House doesn't want it to pass. So when you look at these controls and the margins especially, you want a big margin and you want a party to have control who will allow the Congress to pass things.
Okay. For the Senate, what races are you watching tonight?
So I'm looking at the Montana race, in which a Democratic incumbent could flip to Republican, correct?
Yes.
I am also watching the West Virginia race is another possible flip that a lot of people are looking at. The Maryland race is close. In my home state of Pennsylvania, there is a tight Senate race between incumbent Bob Casey and challenger Dave McCormick. Lots of interesting races going on in the Senate tonight.
Okay, thank you. What about the House? Do you think we could see some surprises?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of Republican incumbents in the House that I personally see could possibly get overturned to Democrat. There's also Democrat incumbencies that could get flipped. And there's a lot of open seats too. I was looking at Michigan District 7 and 8 are open seats that could be interesting results.
Yeah. Anyone else?
There's definitely a couple of districts in California and New York that could definitely flip Democratic, and those make a big difference because the Democrats only really need 4 more votes to gain leadership of the House. So when you're looking at these districts where the margin is very slim, you have to consider that there is a big chance that this control could flip from Republican to Democratic Party.
Okay, now it's prediction time. After all the votes have been counted, who do you think will control the Senate?
Yeah, so I'll go first. I personally think the Republicans will control the Senate when all the votes have been counted. I don't see many possibilities for the Democrats to take control of the Senate. I think in all likelihood the Republicans will end up with Senate control.
I agree. I think it'll be a 51-49 majority for the Republican Party. However, I do think there are 2 races that could possibly give the Democrats the majority, and I think that's in Texas and in Nebraska. Nebraska, it is an independent who is running, but if he wins, he would most likely be caucusing with the Democrats. Those races aren't as tight as some other races, but I think they're very interesting to watch because they are a lot closer than they normally would be.
Okay. I believe that the Republicans will have the majority in the Senate, and it could be either 51 or 52. So Ohio could flip, but it's a very slim margin, so there's a chance it could just stay Democratic, and that would be the choice where it just stays at 51 majority in the Senate.
Okay, cool. How about the House? Will the margins be just as slim as they are now?
I actually think the margins are going to get slimmer in the House. I think it's going to come closer between the two parties, but I think ultimately the Democrats will end up with control of the House. But I'm not as confident in that as I am with my answer on the Senate. It could go to the Republicans. The House is much more hotly contested, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I believe the majority will be the exact same, but in the flip, I think the Democrats will hold the 223 majority to the Republicans' 212 minority. I feel like there are a lot of seats where the Republicans are not polling very well. They're not raising a lot of money, and a lot of things with the way the speaker turned out, and a lot of things that happened in the House that really made voters look upon them a lot more negatively in this election. So I think the Democrats are going to come out on top with about the same majority that the Republicans have currently.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. It was a crazy year and a half for the House speakership. If Republicans keep control of the House, will Mike Johnson keep the gavel?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a crazy speakership for Mike Johnson with the Freedom Caucus and representatives such as Marjorie Taylor Greene voting to oust him from his speakership position. And Johnson has made attempts at bipartisanship with his stopgap funding bill, which have not gone over well with his fellow party members. It's been a turbulent speakership, but ultimately I don't think the Republicans in the House have many strong candidates for the speakership. I think ultimately, if they do win the House, they will stick with Johnson as Speaker, despite the fact that his popularity is wavering. At the end of the day, the Speaker oftentimes isn't a popular position. It is a hard job to have, and bipartisanship is required.
Okay, cool. Do you guys want to add anything else?
I believe if the Republicans win the House again, I think we'll see a repeat of what we saw at the beginning of last Congress. We'll see a lot of people go for the seat because Jim Jordan, who ran against Mike McCarthy, is already starting to garner some support if the Republicans win the majority. And I think we'll see that same kind of thing. I know the House Majority Leader, Steve Scalise, he ran against Johnson as well, but then he kind of dropped out. But as the leading Democrat or leading Republican in the House currently, I feel like he would have the best chance to challenge Johnson. But like Dominic said, I don't know if they'll anymore after a lot of the budget things that got passed.
Well, thank you all for being here. You all get an A tonight in my book. And we'll send it back to Cole and Regina at the desk.
Speaking about the West Virginia race, Trump has now won West Virginia with a total of 49.4%, leaving Kamala at 48.6%. We have to note that also West Virginia has overall 4 votes. It will be interesting to see what seats flip and who will be in Congress control in the next Congress.
Yeah, with several races so close, and we know there are usually a few surprises. It could be either party, so we shall see.
A couple of results to bring you now.
Yes, as we mentioned, West Virginia has gone to Donald Trump, so that puts Donald Trump at 23 Electoral College votes, and Kamala Harris is at 3. Also, we can also announce that Governor Mike Braun has won the state of Indiana.
Still to come, another student panel, but this one focused on the race for president and what history may be able to teach us.
And we'll preview what's coming up in our 8 o'clock hour. So don't go away. More to come in just a few minutes. You're watching live election night coverage on the Purdue Channel.
I mean, every year is different, but it hasn't changed that much. Our league is just ominous, and you better lace them up tight and be ready to play every night. If not, you're going to get beat.
On election day, time zone differences create unique voting schedules. Dixville Notch and Harts Pass in New Hampshire are known for voting first, at midnight. The tradition began in 1960, symbolizing the beginning of the American voting process. In contrast, some remote areas of Alaska and Hawaii are among the last to close polling stations, particularly areas of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. Due to their proximity to the international date line, may remain open hours after polling stations in other parts of the United States close. In addition, Indiana and Kentucky are two of the first states to close polls on Election Day. Parts of these two states will close polls at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and other states will close polls hours or several hours later. These time differences illustrate the vast geographic span of the United States, with voting, closing, and opening separated by hours. From early midnight voting in New Hampshire to the last round of voting in Alaska and Hawaii, the schedule highlights the inclusiveness of voters in different regions and the importance of every vote. Ahead in our next hour, more polls will close across the country, and that means more results to break down.
Plus, we'll have a special interview on post-election well-being because not everyone will be happy with what happens tonight. We'll talk to a researcher about putting those feelings into perspective and navigating difficult conversations with family and friends.
We'll also take you back to Honors Hall and the election night watch party. Reporters Alex Kirkove and Mason Shorter will be bringing us more live interviews.
And we'll look in on more of the activities planned for 8 o'clock.
Regine and I will leave you after the break, but anchors Kyle Horschel and Will Courtney will take over for us.
They will guide you through the next hour of results and highlight the big races we've got our eye on. Stay with us. More election night live coverage is just ahead here on the Purdue channel.
Three, two, one.
In 3, 2, 1.
You're watching Fast Track News.
At Purdue University, we're not just students, we're future leaders. Join Air Force ROTC to embark on a journey of honor, excellence, and service. Learn, lead, and soar to new heights. It's not just a commitment, it's a calling. Purdue Air Force ROTC, where dreams take flight. Are you ready to rise? I got a switch in my head. I go from living to dead. You got me seeing all red. Now I'm becoming.
I revere this office. I love my country more.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
So Diego stands for
Thank you very much.
There's an energy out there right now. I'm convinced that we are going to win the White House, the Senate, and the House.
And artists have a space to express themselves. And
I believe we're going to hold our majority, but it will be close.
With the future president of the United States!
Donald Trump has to win this election.
And I would expect there to be a line, which is very exciting, that energy that we're feeling. There's a lot of people participating.
We even had our own showcase last year, and that was really exciting. Not only offers like weekly classes and performance opportunities, but kind of like a really strong community/family.
We have many paths, in fact, to victory, and I feel very good about where we are.
Groceries have gone up like triple, and I'm hoping that people are going to think about that when they go into that voting booth.
You got a choice in this election.
By every measure, she has demonstrated that she's ready.
So here we have the Trump cookies, and then over here we have the Harris cookies.
And like it could be the place where you discover like, a big part of your life.
That's just his style, but that's the style that got him all the support.
Whereas if we heard that out of our loved ones, we'd be like, okay, Grandpa, it's time to take your keys.
But secure our borders, help our veterans and help the U.S. people.
We want to make sure that, we have somebody that's want to support women and abortion rights is very important to us.
Now the fate of our nation is in your hands. It really is. We win this state, we win the whole thing.
Make no mistake, we will win.
We're loud, we're fast, we are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is hurling.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The club's been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.
It's now 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and I'm Will Courtney.
And I'm Kyle Herschel. We'll be your anchors for our final hour of coverage on this election night, November 5th, 2024.
Before we jump into the news, we have breaking news coming out of Georgia, where several non-credible bomb threats at 12 polling stations across the state have been identified. They are, again, non-credible according to the Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, and some of these are allegedly from the state or the country of Russia.
Although there are polls closing at the turn of the 8 o'clock hour in some states, voting is still active across much of the country. Over the last hour, Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, West Virginia, and as well as parts of Florida, Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Texas concluded voting. This, of course, does not include those who are still waiting in line to vote in these states. What can we expect to see in the next hour, Will?
Yeah, well, over the course of the next hour, we will hopefully be able to start seeing some results come out from some of these states, as well as the states that concluded voting at both 6 and 7 o'clock. We will also see polls close in Arkansas at 8:30 and in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Louisiana, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Mexico, New York, Wisconsin, Wyoming, and the remaining counties of Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Texas at 9. Let's take a look at what we have planned for the next hour.
Of course, we'll check back in with the team at Honors Hall. Several live reports coming your way. Plus, not everyone will be happy with the results of this election. How do we move on from today? Reporter Alex Custer will sit down with Dr. Heather Servati-Sieb to discuss the concepts of gains and losses this evening and how to difficult conversations with friends and family. Reporter Alex Kirchhoff will join us live from the watch party, where a trivia game is happening as we speak. Now let's recap some of the results we know at this hour and give you updates on new races.
Big thanks to the data team for gathering this information. Let's take a look. So what we're currently looking at for the presidential race right now is, if we pull this up somewhere, is states such as our very own, Indiana, has actually been called for the President Trump, but in addition to that, Kentucky has also been. Those were some of the first two that were closed at the beginning of the night.
Vermont and West Virginia have also been called, Vermont for Kamala and West Virginia for Donald Trump. The big race of the night is, of course, the presidential race. Polls indicate a tight race between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, with Harris holding an advantage among women voters and Trump leading among men. Trump's former primary rival, Nikki Haley, who endorsed him after exiting the race, advised his campaign to be cautious in their rhetoric about women. Harris has centered her campaign on issues affecting women, such as reproductive rights, and has criticized Trump's claim that he would be a, quote, protector of women. However, in the latest New York Times Siena poll, the economy remains the number one issue for voters. Breaking down the polls by issue, and Trump has the edge on the economy, according to those surveyed. That being said, the economy gap between the two candidates has shrunk in that same poll. Trump is also ahead in the polls on immigration, which his campaign continues to make a focus. Even after the race is called, strategists will be breaking down which issues swayed voters, especially moderates and undecided voters in this election.
Also tonight, we'll be watching for the battle of control for Congress. It could be a help or a hurdle, and it could be a big hurdle at that for the next president. Let's look at the House. One big question remained unanswered. Can Democrats take control by flipping the majority in their favor? It's been a turbulent 2 years in the GOP-led House, marked by an ousted Speaker and internal conflicts. Now Speaker Mike Johnson is working to hold on to power and possibly expand their slim majority. Johnson has visited over 20 states to energize the MAGA base, even in Democrat-leaning districts, hoping for a united GOP Washington. To maintain power, Republicans need to defend seats in the Biden-won districts and flip some Democratic ones as well, likely leading to another narrow majority and potential gridlock. Democrats have outspent Republicans in the House race by more than $100 million. That makes this battle for the House the most expensive ever.
Now let's analyze the following gubernatorial races to watch. Democrat Jennifer McCormick faces Republican Senator Mike Braun in Indiana's race for governor on Tuesday. Both candidates are making final pushes to secure voter support in this highly anticipated election. Next state of North Carolina is tightening up as Republican Mark Robinson faces Democrat Josh Stein in North Carolina's closely watched race for governor. Both candidates are campaigning hard as Election Day approaches. Lastly, the great state of New Hampshire has Democrat Joyce Craig face Republican Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire's race for governor. Both candidates are in a tight contest as voters prepare to head to the polls.
A recent study by the American Psychological Association shows that many Americans are stressed out by this election. Are you one of them?
All the campaigns and ads bombarding you with messages of how consequential the election is. That weight can take a toll. So how do you cope? How do you manage that stress? Here's some suggestions from reporter Brian Abel.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious.
If Kamala gets 4 more years, she will obliterate our economy.
With messages like those feeding the notion that the 2024 presidential election is the most consequential in American history, it can be easy to feel stressed.
And being exposed to so many news that are not always positive or happy or encouraging leads to more sense of distress.
There are ways to manage the anxiety. Mental health experts suggest limiting time exposed to stressful content, like doom scrolling on social media, and do things that are good for your mind, body, and spirit.
Self-care routines that we all have or should have that include physical activation, engaging in activities that are pleasurable, making sure that discussions that we have with friends or family members are not necessarily around the topics that are currently stressful.
And if you find yourself frustrated by a friend, family member, or coworker with different political views, UCLA's Dr. Emmanuel Maidenberg says it's important to remember people are more than just their political beliefs.
Recognizing that opinions, including political opinions, are based in our personal life experiences. Thinking about it that way allows for some compassion to understand that the other person may have different view or different interpretation of some of the things that happen.
In Washington, Brian Abel reporting.
This just in, we have breaking news out of Florida. The state has been called for Donald Trump with a 55% to 44% lead over Kamala Harris. Will, was this to be expected?
Yeah, I mean, this was a race that we really expected to go into Trump's ways, into Trump's territory. But when you look at kind of what the last 2020 election was, it wasn't very close. I mean, it was pretty close when it comes down to it. It was, I think, about a 4 or 5% margin of difference between current President Biden and then former President Trump. Kind of putting that into what the states we're watching right now, with Indiana and Kentucky, those are Trump territory with 11 and 8 different electoral votes with that, but also with Vermont as well. Vermont and West Virginia, West Virginia has been called for Trump as well, so add that to our tally that we were just kind of racking up with 19 electoral votes plus 4. That puts them now at 24 electoral votes. And then Vermont with Kamala. Kamala is currently at 3 electoral votes confirmed, and this is from the AP, I believe. So
yes,
yeah, this is what we expected to see tonight.
Right. Let's check in on the election night watch party now.
Reporter Alex Kirkovy is keeping an eye on the action over there for us. Alex, we heard trivia was happening now. Can you confirm and also tell us what else is going on over at the Honors College?
Hi guys, I am here with Lynn, who is a freshman studying political science and law and society communication. Did I get all that right?
Yep.
And then I'm also here with Alexis, who is a freshman studying creative writing. So they've been here most of the night tonight, and I actually came upon them playing trivia, but I wanted to ask you guys, what has been your favorite event so far tonight?
I really enjoyed playing the trivia, but I've been here, the printing press guy is gone now, but he was very interesting to hear about everything going on right there.
And you, Alexis?
I would say just sitting with my friends, and also the trivia is pretty fun, even though I'm not a history buff, but I still learned a lot, so that was really cool.
And with you guys both being freshmen, obviously this is all new to you guys. How did you guys hear about this event specifically, and what about you wanted to come to this event?
I'm in Pi Sigma Alpha, which is the Political Science Honor Society, and I heard about it through them and also through my poli-sci professors.
Yeah, and then I just came back from home, and then I texted her and I was asking her what was going on, and she's like, I'm going to the debate, and I was like, okay, I'll go with you. So
great, I love it. Something to do. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for talking with me, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Thank you. Yeah. Just to keep you guys a little informed on what's going on here, there was a trivia game, and I actually came across some of those questions. So I'm going to hit you guys with a couple of those questions right now. Which president served the longest term? I'm going to give you guys 3 seconds to think about it. It was Franklin Roosevelt. And then another question that I found interesting was what year was voting age reduced to 18? And that was in 1971. So just fun things like that. They had a trivia game just a little while ago. I know you guys were asking about that. And then they also have a handmade memorabilia. I'm going to hold that up now. You can get these over there at the table. It's just something nice to commemorate the night. It says Purdue 2024 Purdue Watch Party. And then also a couple other things that are going on is they have predictions for the first 100 days. That's just to predict what is going to happen in the first 100 days of the next president. And then also swing state predictions. I know that's something very pressing right now and what we are heavily reporting on. And so they are actually doing over there, they have swing state predictions going on. So those are just a couple of things that are happening here in Honors Hall. The students are really excited, and the biggest thing is they're taking advantage of all the things that are happening here. Like I said, I spoke with Lynn and Alexis, and both being freshmen, and I just really admire the fact that they are taking advantage of something that's going on here and broadening their horizons, and they're getting to enjoy something that they wouldn't normally get to see. So I'm Alex Kirkove reporting here from Honors Hall, and it's been a great night, and I'll report back to you in a little while with some members from CCSE.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. And like Alex said, she'll be back in just a few moments. But before we go back to that, I know we just called the race for Florida just a few minutes ago. We have 4 races that were actually just called by the AP. Those are from Tennessee, South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Rhode Island. For 3 of those states, it's going to be going to Trump with Tennessee with 11 electoral votes, South Carolina with 9, and Oklahoma with 7. Those are pretty wide margins in Tennessee, especially with 82% of the vote. And then Kamala is winning Rhode Island as well by kind of slimmer margins, all things considered, compared to the other 3. Granted, they are in different geographical areas of the country. But Kamala is winning with 56% of the vote compared to former President Trump with 43.2. Now, Kyle, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is this what we kind of expected to see tonight?
Yeah, for the most part, this is what we expected to see out of these states. You know, we get 27 votes in the hands of Republicans and 4 votes in the hands of Democrats. But this was also, these states were expected to swing these ways, so it's nothing out of the norm of what we were expecting.
Yeah, and I'm looking at South Carolina right now. It's starting to make me think a little bit about swing state North Carolina as well, which hopefully we'll be kind of seeing those results come in. I don't quite remember when those ballots close, but we will hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. So yeah, reporter Alex Kirkove will be back with another interview shortly, this one with the Center for C-SPAN Scholarship Engagement student community. We'll find out how they've been preparing for Election Day and the events they host on campus.
Plus, celebrity endorsements. Just how much do they matter in a presidential election? Spoiler alert, a lot. We'll have the full story next. You're watching live election night coverage on the Purdue channel.
The program allows students to finish their bachelor's degree and also get an online master's degree that overlap during their last year at Purdue.
Students can more quickly work towards a graduate degree while concurrently starting their professional careers.
The online program allows them to kind of go at their own pace, and so they're not having to abide by the academic calendar.
And our goal is that this would make you even more compelling for your next opportunity in the workforce.
How many of you guys have heard of Gary, Indiana?
Voter turnout will be key in a tight election like this one, but it's not just how many people will vote, but more specifically where they are voting and what demographics.
For example, in an article by the Miami Herald posted on Friday, more women are voting early compared to men. What effect will this have when it shows the trends that are continuing until Election Day? Could we see some surprising results?
And here's more interesting reporting on early voting. According to Fox 4 in Dallas, Texas, early voting is down in the Lone Star State compared to 2020. As of Friday, when early voting ended there, 42% of registered voters had cast a ballot early. In the 2020 election, that number was 57%. Now, one big factor that could explain the numbers is that there are fewer early voting days in Texas this year. In 2020, more days were added due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Overall, early voting is down across the country, but other states may be similar to Texas with a decrease in the number of days to vote early. But will we make up for the drop with Election Day voting? We will soon learn that answer. The economy is usually one of the big issues during a presidential election.
And 2024 is no different. Researchers are saying this election is affecting consumer spending, causing people to hold on tight to their wallets until after Election Day. Emily Schmidt breaks down the numbers in this Consumer Watch.
Though polls show voters sharply divided about their presidential choice, one thing unites them.
The election is top of mind for many, many consumers.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
This question has rolled around every election since Ronald Reagan asked it of Jimmy Carter. Gallup asked it last month. 39% said they are better off. 52% said they're worse. The positive view most likely to come from Democrats, yet both parties see opportunities to win over voters.
My vision of an opportunity economy is one where everyone can compete and have a real chance to succeed.
If Kamala Harris gets 4 more years, our economy can never recover.
The University of Michigan surveys consumers each month, and this month found their expectations of the economy hinge on who they believe will win the election.
A lot of consumers believe that the economy will look very, very different under the two candidates. So there probably isn't that much confidence for big ticket purchases right now.
Big ticket purchases like appliances, autos, homes. An October Ipsos poll of consumers found 47% saying they're spending less because of election uncertainty. The same amount say they're saving more.
I think collectively consumers are looking for some relief in the next couple of weeks and some resolution to the uncertainty they've been facing all year.
With the White House on the line, consumers say their bottom line is at stake too. For Consumer Watch, I'm Emily Schmidt.
Well, in presidential news, Connecticut has been called in favor of Kamala Harris with a 69% share of votes won. And the North Carolina governor race has been called for Josh Stein, who is a Democrat. And he is also the first Jewish governor in the state of North Carolina. Will, in a swing state such as North Carolina, how much does it affect the governor race swinging one way as far as the presidential race?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, Josh Stein winning his bid for governor is a pretty, if you're Kamala Harris, that's what you want to see tonight. You want to see people down the ballot in the states that, such as North Carolina or Pennsylvania, they're going blue. That's exactly what you want to start seeing. Going to Connecticut, we've been kind of talking about, is this state expected to go blue? Connecticut's probably one of those that you're like, okay, Connecticut's definitely going blue. That's another 7 electoral college votes added to Kamala Harris's tally so far.
So a good few moments for Democrats right there.
I'd say so.
The Center for C-SPAN Scholarship and Engagement is a national research center focused on discovery, learning, and engagement utilizing the C-SPAN video library.
The center creates a number of opportunities for students and a place to come together and learn about politics and history. We're now going to learn a little bit about the CCSE student community and how it serves the Purdue campus. Let's go back live to Alex Kirkove, who is standing by with a few members. Alex?
Hi guys, I am here with Mackenzie, who is a junior, and Jaden, who is a senior, and they are going to be talking a little bit about CCSE. So Mackenzie, can you first off tell us what CCSE is?
Yeah, the CCSE is a student-run organization, and we focus on fostering nonpartisan conversation about political current event topics, and we also do some professional development events throughout the whole semester as well. So we'll do meetings about current events. We just did a meeting about the hurricane and the implications that has on us today. And we also do guest meetings with a ton of special guests and Purdue alumni who we're very thankful to have come and meet us either in person or through Zoom. So we've been very lucky to have some great guests with the CCSE student community.
That sounds incredible. And also, I just spoke with 2 freshmen a little while ago. So someone like them who is looking to be a part of a club like CCSE, are there any requirements, or do they have to be a part of a specific major, or is this open to anyone?
Yeah, the CCSE is open to any student, any year of all majors. We really want to get diverse opinions in the CCSE, especially talking about current events and current political topics. So we'd love to have people from diverse majors all across Purdue.
And then you were also talking about how you have professionals come in, or you're talking about the different events that you hold for CCSE. So Jaden, I hear that you want to talk a little bit about some of those people that come in for those events or those meetings. So tell us about one of the most impactful people that you've had come in to one of the CCSE meetings and talk.
Yeah, this semester we've had a couple of guest speaker meetings with people that have graduated at Purdue. For example, we've had Dale Papillo, who's an alumni here, and he was an assistant, a part of the Secret Service for Biden and Cheney, and he described his experiences of talking with like the Pope and like meeting the president, and it was very enlightening to see that Purdue alumni can achieve at their highest field by graduating here.
Great, and then also just for a little sneak peek, again, if someone's watching this and is interested in CCSE, and if it's something that they maybe want to check out, what are some upcoming speakers that you have?
For our last meeting next week, we're honoring our seniors, but we have a guest speaker, Brian Lamb, who is the founder of C-SPAN and the former CEO, and he just talks to us about like the current political climate in Washington, D.C., but also the experiences he's had through politics throughout the years. And it's very nice to just see that someone gives back to our club and also comes back to Purdue and is not afraid to come in person or on Zoom to just chat with students and get to know them.
Great, and what about you, Mackenzie? Has there been a impactful speaker, and what about them was so impactful, specifically maybe to you and like your major, what you want to do?
Yeah, so I think my favorite speaker so far has been Howard Mortman, who's the Director of Communications at C-SPAN, and I'm political science econ, I'm not in comms, but Howard was still able to give us so much enlightening information about the state of politics in the U.S. today and political communication, especially with social media and the way that both Harris and Trump have been campaigning this year.
And you ladies have been out here all night doing different events. We talked a little bit about the events that were happening. I know you, were you there at the trivia as well?
Yes,
doing the trivia? Yeah, I was not doing very well on those answers. But part of this is like how this event comes together. So CCSE has had a big part in this event here. What parts have you played a part in or have been your favorite?
Yeah, I think my favorite part has been the predictions about the swing states. So the student community chose about 6 or 7 swing states, and we have a survey out right now so students can decide which way they think the states will go, and then at the end of the night we're going to compare those predictions to what actually does happen.
All right, and what about you, Jaden? What has been something that you've enjoyed doing or being a part of, or maybe even been a part of making in the process here? Has there been anything that stuck out to you?
I just enjoyed discussing what is going to happen in our election and just bonding with other students.
Perfect. All right, I'm reporting here in Honors Hall. I'm Alex Kirkove.
Thanks, Alex.
And remember, anyone can join the CCSE student community. You do not have to be a political science major.
Coming up, we'll check in with our data team once again on any more election results.
Plus, we'll take a look at how early voting went for some Purdue students. And we also caught up with a certain Purdue basketball coach. Her thoughts on voting, that's still to come. You're watching live election night coverage on the Purdue channel. We'll be right back. In addition to the food, there's a photo booth where you can snap a pic commemorating the night. You can make your predictions too. Do you think the Senate will go red or stay blue? Will the House flip? Yay or nay? Make your guess. We'll see what happens.
Both candidates for president have leaned on star power in their bid for your vote. Vice President Kamala Harris had the big Taylor Swift endorsement. She's had Eminem and former President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama on the campaign trail as well.
And former President Donald Trump has also enjoyed support from celebs like Hulk Hogan, Tucker Carlson, and Elon Musk. CNN's Brian Todd is taking a closer look at the impact of these endorsements and appearances.
I'ma keep running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
This is a huge get for Kamala Harris. It generates excitement, it generates buzz, and that's what Kamala Harris's team wants in these final days.
I think it just shows the breadth and depth of the support that we have and also the enthusiasm.
The sheer star power that's been brought to the 2024 race is palpable.
Are you ready for it?
Harris has also scored the endorsement of musical icon Taylor Swift, who brings more than 280 million Instagram followers, and a proven record of being able to inspire young people to register to vote.
With Taylor, it's not just about her influence, it's her power. It's her ability to speak to a massive fandom.
If Kamala wins,
Harris has won endorsements from musician Lizzo, pop and R&B star Usher, actor George Clooney, Oprah Winfrey, who spoke at the Democratic National Convention.
Values and character matter most of all.
with the future president of the United States!
And from rapper Megan Thee Stallion, who also appeared with the vice president at a rally. Donald Trump has scored a high-profile endorsement from ex-owner Elon Musk, who's also contributed tens of millions of dollars to boost Trump's campaign.
Donald Trump has to win this election. It really does.
Trump's also won the endorsement of country rock star Kid Rock, who performed at the Republican National Convention. An endorsement from actor Dennis Quaid, who's campaigned for Trump, and from icons of combat sports like UFC head Dana White and pro wrestler Hulk Hogan.
Let Trumpomania run wild, brother!
These may not be the most popular with Gen Z college girls, but men, that's a big part of Donald Trump's coalition. And that's who he's trying to tap into with those celebrities. He does need those celebrities to validate him.
On Harris's side, the suspense now lies with one tantalizing possibility.
I'm sure that they would love for Taylor Swift to appear alongside Kamala Harris.
And if you want an even deeper dive into the impact of Hollywood on politics, check out the book Showbiz Politics by Purdue University professor Dr. Catherine Brownell.
Yeah, in it, she looks at how both parties have partnered with celebrities and used the entertainment industry to gain political power. She also wrote another book called 24/7 Politics and the Impact of Cable News on American Politics. We'll continue to watch more for some updates from all the races around the nation.
And right after the break, we'll talk about post-election well-being. How do you protect your mental health if results don't go your way? We'll dive into that. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine a world where Olympics and Paralympics are unified as one, and where all athletes at all levels have equal opportunities to play and perform at their full potential.
Athletics has been such an influential and transformative aspect of my life. So to me, RISE is about ensuring that every person that has the desire to participate in sport has the opportunity to do so.
This organization is about recognition. We believe in recognizing excellence where it is found, especially in Paralympic sports.
RISE is about driving change in our community and beyond. We hope that through our events and initiatives, we can galvanize people for our cause and inspire them to create an ever-growing network to help achieve our mission.
It's about connecting people of various backgrounds and who truly care about creating meaningful change together.
We develop projects and hold events to bring people together at the interface of inclusivity, sports, and engineering.
Our goal is to promote the equality of all sports and to improve sports performance and accessibility.
Join us so that you can have a major contribution in creating meaningful change.
After the results are in and races have been called, especially the race for president, one side will be very happy, and the other side, well, less happy.
With as polarized and politically divided the United States is right now, the disappointment will be a very heavy feeling for many. How do we move forward if we don't like the results? How do we navigate difficult conversations with family and friends? We brought in an expert tonight, and she's standing by here in the studio with Alex Custer. Alex?
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Dr. Heather Shabadi-Side, who is a Senior Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning at Purdue. You're also a grief and loss researcher, psychology counseling professor, and a licensed practicing psychologist as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So, you and your team have come up with a framework about gains and losses in all aspects of life. Yeah. Is that something that we could apply here in a post-2024 election world?
I think it's quite possible for the framework that we've developed focused on gains and losses to be useful. I think it may not be for everyone, but I think in many situations it can be useful for those who are affected by the election either way. So I think the biggest point is that loss, the idea of loss, is actually applicable and useful beyond death losses. And there are lots of losses that we face, and most significant life events, we would argue, have both gains and losses that are a part of them. If an event is desirable, there will be more gains. If an event is undesirable, there will be more losses. But in most cases, there will eventually be both. I think a lot of the challenges that we face in this election are more, the losses are probably more salient and more kind of in front of our faces. And whenever we experience losses, we also experience grief. And so I think there will be a good bit of grief for whichever side, right? As you have all said, there will be a winner and there will be a loser, and whichever side loses, there will be a great deal of grief. For the side that wins, there will be more easily recognizable gains initially. And so I think it's applicable that way.
All right, as Kyle and Will mentioned, as you just mentioned yourself, one side will win this election and the other won't, because we cannot have two winning parties. Right. And that can be tough to deal with sometimes. Is this something that can and should be looked at in terms of gains and losses?
As I think it's hard to think about gains if your side lost, right? And so I think it's also, challenging to think about how do you cope with those losses, like what do you do with that sense. But I do think it's applicable, and I think for many people, they can find their experience to be a bit overwhelming, and sometimes thinking about it through the lens of grief can be helpful, because grief is not, I've seen a lot of articles about anxiety, but grief is not just about anxiety. It's not even just about emotions. Grief is often about emotions, but it's about how we function cognitively, physiologically, socially, spiritually. And I think in this case, when people are so invested in this election, it's going to affect a lot of who they are and how they function in the world.
So to say that this election has been heated is putting it very lightly. There's been a lot of extreme comments from the presidential candidates, and they both have very passionate supporters. That can be some pretty big feelings just out there and open, some big highs and lows. And what do you think we can do to resolve those feelings or to avoid being pulled into despair post-election?
I think if we are going to use the frame of sort of grief, I think there's not necessarily immediate resolution or things that we can do directly and specifically that will just take it away, right? That's not, I think, an appropriate expectation. But thinking about it through a grief sort of lens, like we grieve things we're attached to, and clearly there is a lot of passion and a lot of intensity on both sides of this election. And so I think when we talk about grief, we talk about how we live in stories and our lives are sort of narrative. And so when we have significant losses, it kind of throws off our sense of who we are and how the world works and what the future will look like. And I think those kinds of concepts fit very nicely into thinking about how we will cope. I mean, for those whose side loses, there's a lot of sort of reconsidering to do about how do they make sense of this loss, and then how do they make sense of the future and their concerns about the future related to now what it will look like as things move forward. I think it's also important to realize that it won't be quick. I mean, there will be a process of sense making for all of those with this election. I think there's an intensity, even for the side that wins, there's a lot of intensity. And so making sense of that intensity is also very important. And I do think no matter who wins, there will eventually be gains and losses that both sides see. And I think it will be important for individuals to truly sort of keep that in mind. Like, rather than getting lost in the despair, to remember that elections are how our country run, and that people have survived in the past, and they will survive this as well. It'll be variable for people, but there will be points still within their lives where there will be gains. They may not attribute those gains to the person who won the election if it wasn't who they wanted to win the election. But that doesn't mean there won't potentially, eventually, be some losses that are involved. So I think it's a lot about sense making. It's a lot about sort of rewriting sort of what you thought the future might be in the case if your candidate doesn't win. I also really like to suggest to people that they keep a focus on what they have control over versus what they don't have control over. And to think about what they're committed to in their life and how they can continue the things that they're committed to regardless of how the election emerges. That there's still purpose, there's still action, and there's still ways to move forward that are very productive.
All right, the results of the election will be a major part of the news cycle no matter what happens, and it'll be on all of our social media, all news channels, and topic of conversations no matter where we go. How do we navigate those tough conversations in a healthy way, whether it's with a friend or a family member that we don't agree with? How do we navigate those for ourselves and for others?
I think it's a very good question because I don't know that we've been navigating it well up to the election. So thinking about how we will navigate it well after is even a bit harder. I think that the key is that we do have to navigate it. We do need to try to be engaged with one another, regardless of our political perspectives and our beliefs. I mean, it's really important for us to remember, these are large issues, of course, large national issues, but the election is not necessarily affecting how you treat your neighbor. We need to be engaged with one another and in community with one another, and to do right by each other, regardless of our political perspectives. And I know that can sound very naive or almost too idealistic, which I'm often accused of. But I still think that we have that ability to be civil and to be engaged with one another. And I think a lot of it here is also perspective taking, right? If your side wins and the other side doesn't, how are you perspective taking? How are you respectful? How are you acknowledging and recognizing the grief that they are experiencing? You don't have to agree with them, you don't have to agree with their politics, but you can recognize that they are in a state of grief and that, the election didn't go their way, and there can be, I think, some recognition again and some acknowledgement of that, which can go a really long way. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for being with us here tonight. I thought you had some wonderful things to say. This is part of the election conversation that we do not hear about often, and hopefully this is an opportunity to share some guidance on how we will all react and cope in the days ahead. Will and Kyle, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex. We reached out to Purdue Counseling and Psychological Services, better known as CAPS, for this.
Although they weren't able to be here tonight, one of the counselors said if any students need support or experience emotional distress, you can contact the After Hours Emergency Crisis Line or come to CAPS for a walk-in appointment tomorrow. More information can be found at purdue.edu/CAPS. Let's get started to more election results now.
Yeah, our data team has been working to collect some of these results. We actually have a couple right now that were just called over the break. We have Arkansas and Delaware called from NBC. Those are for Delaware, you have for Harris, and Arkansas, you have for Trump. And then you also had two more come in. I believe this is from the AP with Massachusetts and New Jersey. Kyle, I'm looking at these states, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Delaware for Harris. What sticks out to you for those three?
Well, you get a surge of 28 votes for the Democrats, but what's also interesting is when you pair that with Rhode Island and Vermont, which have already been called, and Connecticut, you have all these states in the Northeast that are being called in favor of Harris. And what is that going to point to for Pennsylvania, where they could throw an entire 19 more votes in the swing in the favor of Democrats?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm thinking as well when it comes to some of these states. And I'm looking at Delaware as well. Delaware is obviously a really important state for this administration, President Biden being from Delaware as well. But again, like we've been kind of saying this all night, these are, what we're expecting. Even though Trump currently has a total of 86 electoral votes and Harris is at 42, this isn't surprising. This is exactly what we expected to see tonight. But let's go back into the Congress as well. Let's break down some of the House races because we've talked a lot tonight about the Senate, but the split between Democrats and Republicans in the House is also a pretty narrow one. And there's even a chance that the chamber, which is currently controlled by Republicans, could flip and return control to the Democrats. Kyle has more on some of those House races we're watching tonight.
Yeah, so with the House in a constant frenzy for parties to grab majority party ownership of seats, there are many exciting races to keep an eye on. In New York's 17th congressional district, incumbent Mike Lawler, Republican, faces off against Mondaire Jones, Democrat. This is a rematch of the 2022 election that saw Lawler defeat Mondaire, the former representative for the district, by only 1,800 votes, proving that 2024 could be another nail-biter. Both representative hopefuls have been under fire recently, however. Lawler recently issued apologies for surfaced pictures of him portraying blackface in college as a tribute to Michael Jackson. Jones made apologies for a comment that suggested he called Governor Kathy Hochul the B-word. With these stories coming out so close to the election, we will see whether voters were deterred from either nominee. Moving on to Maine's 2nd congressional district, where incumbent Jared Golden looks to win re-election against Austin Theriault. Theriault, a former NASCAR driver, is a relative newcomer to legislation, while Golden is seeking his 3rd term. Golden is one of the more, quote, independent Democrats, within the House having voted against the Democratic administration more than any other House Democrat. This has caused him to distance himself from the National Party and made him one of the more at-risk Democrats in this election cycle. Now let's move on to the Senate, and let's look at the race in Montana. Will, I know you've been following that one. Break it down for us.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most interesting Senate seats to watch right now. It's, you're in Montana. It's a pretty hard red state, but you have this incumbent who's been in office for almost 4 terms from what I believe, in the form of Jon Tester. Jon Tester is a Democrat, and he's a Democrat inside of Montana, which, again, as I mentioned, isn't what you would totally expect. He's running against Tim Sheehy, who is a Republican. He's pretty hard MAGA Republican, but what he's running on very, very aggressively is that he's a Navy SEAL. These 2 candidates are running for the veteran vote. As I mentioned, Tim Sheehy is a Navy SEAL, but Jon Tester also appeals to veterans in the way that he is the Senate chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. There's a lot of veterans in Montana as well. From last I remember, almost 30% of their population is a veteran, and when you look at kind of the family size as well, that means a lot of people either know a veteran in their life or are part of their family. So when it comes to this race, a lot of polling is saying that Sheehy is going to take the win, which I think is really interesting, especially with Tester being such a reliable name in this seat or in this state. But I don't know. This is one seat that one race that I'm watching specifically. It probably will go to Sheehy from all the polls that I'm seeing. But I'm really curious to see if the polls is gonna imitate what we're seeing from our exit polls. Another one that could be really interesting as well is also Texas. Kyle, why don't you tell me a little bit about Texas?
So this one in the deeply red state of Texas wasn't expected to be as close as it is. It's been the incumbent Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Democratic challenger Representative Colin Allred. In the latest Emerson College poll, Cruz is ahead just barely, with 48% to Allred's 47%. In another poll from the New York Times in Siena, it puts Cruz at 50% and Allred at 46%. Cruz is seeking a 3rd term, and Democrats hope Allred can oust him. Allred is a former NFL player and civil rights attorney. Cruz also has name recognition as a prominent senator and former presidential candidate in 2016. This matchup is expected to be one of the most expensive races in Texas history. We've also got a couple races to watch in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Will, can you tell us a little bit more about those?
That's right, Kyle. In Pennsylvania, as we've mentioned throughout the night, it's a battleground state for the presidential race too. This race features incumbent Bob Casey, a longtime senator. He's running against David McCormick, former chief of Bridgewater Associates, which is one of the world's largest hedge funds. He actually ran for Senate before in 2022, but lost that primary to Dr. Mehmet Oz. Casey is ahead in the polls, but just by 3 points. And in Ohio, incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown is trying to hold on to a seat from Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. Ohio, once considered a swing state, has proven to be a little bit more red over time. So this could be a big challenge for Brown, and this is interesting. Moreno was said to not be the choice from the Republican Party, but he is backed by former President Trump. He's a wealthy Colombian-born businessman, and he's ahead here, but only by 2 points. Coming up, we'll go down to reporter Mason Shorter at Honors Hall. He'll catch us up on some of the 8 o'clock hour events that students happen to be enjoying.
And we'll continue to gather more results. Remember, polls in several states are now closed. We can find out the outcomes and updates of some of those races we just mentioned. Stick with the Purdue channel for more live election night coverage. We'll be right back.
The program allows students to finish their bachelor's degree and also get an online master's degree that overlap during their last year at Purdue.
Students can more quickly work towards a graduate degree while concurrently starting their professional careers.
The online program allows them to kind of go at their own pace, and so they're not having to abide by the academic calendar.
And our goal is that this would make you even more compelling for your next opportunity in the workforce.
Tonight's election night watch party could not have happened without the many student organizations who stepped up to help plan the program. One of them is Honor Services.
Not only are they involved with the election night watch party, but some of their members also happen to be part of the Purdue Votes Coalition too. Let's go live to reporter Mason Shorter, who's standing by with the group now. Hey there, Mason.
Thanks, guys. That's right. I'm here with Honor Serves members Mithran Periasamy and Natalie Horgan. Thank you both for being here tonight. Natalie, tell me a little bit about Honor Serves.
So Honor Serves is a community service organization within the John Martinson Honors College, and we focus on bridging community between the Honors College students and the greater Lafayette area. So we primarily work with 4 community partners, specifically Food Finders, Niches Land Trust, YWCA Domestic Violence and Intervention Program, and most importantly today, Purdue Votes.
Honor Serves was involved in tonight's programming. So what activities were you in charge of, and how would you say it's going so far?
You know, I would say this year's actually been really good. We've gotten events with all of our community partners. So far we've done pumpkin carving to donate to Niches Land Trust. Yesterday we did a partner event with the Cause for Paws to build cat shelters. This weekend we're actually going to Food Finders and volunteering there. We've also been doing an accessibility initiative this year, so we invited Mandy from the DRC, she's the director, and she spoke to our students about increasing accessibility within student organizations.
Thank you, Natalie. So, going on to Mithran, could you explain the relationship between Honor Serves and Purdue Votes?
Sure. So, Purdue Votes tends to need a lot of volunteers for several different things, like running tables to register students to vote and generally raising awareness on campus. And a lot of Honor Serve students tend to be interested in getting their community service hours that way. So that's how that relationship plays off each other. And then me and Francis, another student director, we do a lot of work for both organizations as well.
Thank you. So for students involved in understanding how elections and government affect them, what would you might say to them?
So it matters, and you should vote. You should vote in Tippecanoe County because those local officials are who actually dictate things that matter to where you live and those issues in West Lafayette.
All right, thank you both for making time for us tonight. We now go back to Will and Kyle, and you folks have a good time. Sending it back to you.
Thanks, Mason. Speaking to Purdue student voting, remember, there was just one day to vote early on campus. More than 1,300 people took advantage of that. We're going to revisit that day at the COREC where we caught up with some of the voters.
And we'll look at how Purdue student government helps students get to the polls off campus on Election Day. Purdue offered an on-campus early voting location at the COREC on October 24th. Voting took place from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m., and many students took the opportunity to cast their ballots.
Unlike in many previous elections, this one early voting day was the only time there would be voting on campus for this election. Reporter Cole Sand has the story.
Purdue students lined up for close to an hour to cast in their ballots during Purdue's early voting period on Thursday, October 24th. The voting location was held at the COREC, and ballots were accepted from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Outside of the voting center, there were students, demonstrators, local media, and even dogs. For some students, it was their first time voting in the presidential elections, and they were relatively pleased with how organized the voting process was.
Yeah. Well, originally I was expecting the line to be a lot longer, so that was nice. I thought it was going to be wrapped around the COREC even more than it was. And then upon going in, they had like a different type of machines than the ones that I knew they used prior, so that was a little bit different. I thought it was going to be like a touch screen rather than having the buttons on the side.
I honestly thought it was a little harder, to be honest. Just like registering was kind of like a little weird and trying to get that figured out. And then I was kind of originally thinking like, oh, I just probably vote on election day. And then I kind of moved things forward to voting early. But other than that, I'd say it went smooth. I think the ballots worked nicely. And then obviously there's the long line.
There were not just students voting in the co-rec, but people of all ages and backgrounds.
I want to raise awareness about voting for Purdue students, and especially that we had voting today here at the co-rec. We don't have voting on election day on campus for the first time in many years. And so I thought it was important that people knew about voting and that they could start thinking about making a plan to vote.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't long ago that, women didn't get a right to vote, and now to have that opportunity, it's your civic duty. Get out and let your voice be heard. It's hard to believe that your vote matters, but it absolutely does. And to be able to do it here at the co-rec, we got here at a little after 10, and I'm in and out in an hour. So hopefully we pack this place today, and students' voices can get heard.
Students came to vote on a variety of issues important to them.
Kind of all the basic things. Just the economy is obviously like kind of a big one, like healthcare stuff. I think the environment is also like a pretty big one for me, are kind of the main ones I was looking at.
This allocated day of voting comes with a little bit of controversy. The 2024 election will mark the first time in 20 years that Purdue has not hosted an on-campus polling site on Election Day. This decision was made by the Tippecanoe County Election Board earlier this year. And while that has made it harder for Purdue students to cast in their ballots, as you can see, there's still a large number of students with their IDs ready, and they are eager to make a mark in this year's election. Reporting for Fast Track News, my name is Cole Sand.
I'm on a shuttle located outside of the co-rec that was provided by PSG, which is taking students to various voting locations since there's not one on campus. Yeah, so today we have 3 shuttles that are taking Purdue students to and from different polls. Right now we're taking them to Faith West so they can vote. Yeah, I think it's important because voting kind of decides how our lives look like, what our future looks like, and I think it's everyone's civic duty to do it.
I was really surprised. I thought the co-rec would be open for voting on voting day, but there's only one day open for early election, and there wasn't actually that many hours, and it was on a school day as well, so I couldn't even go there to go vote. So but I'm really happy that the student government has provided these buses so students have easy access to voting.
Were you surprised that it didn't have a voting location on campus?
I was a bit. It's a bit of a ways away. That's why I came here.
Shuttle services ended at 6 p.m. Thank you, PSG, for providing this service for students. This has been Jasmine Studebaker.
The program allows students to finish their bachelor's degree and also get an online master's degree that overlap during their last year at Purdue.
Students can more quickly work towards a graduate degree while concurrently starting their professional careers.
The online program allows them to kind of go at their own pace and so they're not having to abide by the academic calendar.
And our goal is that this would make you even more compelling for your next opportunity in the workforce.
Baseball in general is just a fun group of guys that we're looking to play baseball at the next level, and it's a fun way to have some people come together and play a game we like. The guys that are a nice fit to the team as well as good at baseball. So that's really a big piece of the puzzle to joining the team, and you can get a lot of information just reaching out.
Football. It's the best time of the year. You know what else is great? The world's largest and fastest mascot. You can't have Purdue football without the trains. Look for the Reamer Club outside Stewart Center, 12 to 5 p.m. on Fridays before home football games, for your chance to ride the Boilermaker Special for free. See you then.
I mean, every year's different, but it hasn't changed that much. Our league is just ominous, and you better lace them up tight and be ready to play every night. If not, you're going to get beat.
Loud, we're fast, we are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is Hurling.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The club's been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.
I was too busy. I'm sorry.
Three, two, one.
We are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is Harley.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The club's been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.
The program allows students to finish their bachelor's degree and also get an online master's degree that overlap during their last year at Purdue.
Students can more quickly work towards a graduate degree while concurrently starting their professional careers.
The online program allows them to kind of go at their own pace, and so they're not having to abide by the academic calendar.
And our goal is that this would make you even more compelling for your next opportunity in the workforce.
We're loud, we're fast. We are running a high-speed game.
Hello, this is Harley.
This is the fastest game in the world. It's the fastest game on grass in the world.
The club's been around for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, we're your 2024 NCGA National Champions.